After my father died, he left me a rundown workshop no one wanted. My brother laughed first. My sister followed her eyes full of contempt. So that's what he gave you, he sneered. A pile of scrap. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping. Do yourself a favor, don't dig around in there. Some things are better left buried. I tightened my grip around the key in my hand. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine, like there was something inside that workshop even he was afraid to face. And in that moment, I realized they were hiding something truly terrifying. Thank you for being here with me. Before we begin, drop a quick comment. Have you ever discovered something about someone you trusted that completely changed how you saw them? Just yes or no. Your answer might help someone else feel less alone. Quick note, some details here have been fictionalized for storytelling. What I hope stays with you is the message it carries. They said it was the cruelest thing Rufus Strickland ever did, leaving his middle son a condemned machine shop while the others got millions. I sat in that stiff chair with hands that still smelled faintly of machine oil, even though I'd retired from teaching auto shop 3 months earlier. The second-floor law office in Clarksville, West Virginia, looked like every other small-town attorney's space mahogany furniture gone dark with age air, thick with furniture polish and old paper. Light snow fell past the window, even though it was mid-July. 2 weeks since Dad's funeral. 2 weeks since I'd stood at the graveside, while Vernon flew in from Dallas for exactly 4 hours, and Marlene arrived from Lexington with a photographer. Lorraine squeezed my hand under the table. My wife, 54 with silver, threading through her dark hair, and the steady calm of someone who'd spent 30 years married to a man who fixed everyone's problems but his own. Vernon sat across from me, 60 and broad as a steakhouse door, barely containing his smirk behind a Dallas-tailored suit. My older brother, the one who'd left Athens County at 18 and never looked back except to collect rent checks. Marlene, 47, had already pulled out her leather notebook, Lexington pearls at her throat, fingers ready to document whatever good fortune was coming. My sister, the one who'd turned Dad's connections into a public relations empire. Beside her sat Senator Quentin Whitfield, 50 Kentucky's golden boy with a smile practiced in 10,000 mirrors and a gubernatorial campaign that had his face on every billboard between Frankfort and the Tennessee border. Howard Brennan cleared his throat. 70 years old with silver reading glasses and the careful measured energy of someone who delivered difficult news many times before. He opened the leather portfolio containing my father's final wishes. We are gathered for the reading of the last will and testament of Rufus Eugene Strickland, deceased June 28, 2024. He said, I'd been the kid who fixed things, always the fixer, never the fixed for. 28 years teaching high school auto shop, while Vernon counted money in Dallas, and Marlene climbed social ladders in Lexington. The senator whispered something to Marlene. Neither of them looked at me. Brennan read the formalities, sound mind legal capacity revocation of prior wills. Then he got to the meat. To my eldest son, Vernon Claude Blackwell, I leave my complete interest in Blackwell Steakhouse Holdings, valued at approximately $15 million, together with the Highland Park property and all furnishings therein. Vernon exhaled quiet, satisfied, like a man who'd been holding his breath for 2 weeks and finally got permission to breathe. $15 million. Brennan continued without pause. To my daughter Marlene Grace Whitfield, I leave Whitfield Communications, LLC, valued at $9 million, and the offshore investment portfolio held in trust, valued at approximately $4 million. Marlene allowed herself a small smile, wrote something in her notebook, probably already calculating quarterly earnings. The senator put his hand over hers, a gesture for witnesses, not for comfort. $24 million between them. I did the math automatically the way a teacher does. Lorraine's hand tightened under the table. What kind of father divides $24 million between 2 children and leaves the third with whatever was about to come next? Brennan removed his glasses, cleaned them with a cloth from his breast pocket, put them back on with the deliberate care of a man buying himself 5 seconds to choose his words. To my son, Wendell Hayes, E.H. Strickland, I leave the property located at 47 Mill Hollow Road, Athens County, Ohio. The machine shop, all structures on the land, all contents therein, and the 3.4 acres on which it stands. Appraised value, $32,000. With the condition that said, property may not be sold, transferred, or disposed of for a period of 24 months from the date of this will's execution. Silence. Then Vernon laughed once controlled, before it broke into something he couldn't quite contain. His shoulders shook. He covered his mouth with one hand, but his eyes were wet with laughter that came from relief and superiority mixed together. Marlene's shoulders trembled. She pressed her lips together, wrote something else, but I could see the smile she was trying to hide. At the $32,000, Vernon said, like he was tasting the words. For a building the county condemned 8 years ago. The senator looked at me with what he probably thought was sympathy. We'll figure something out for you, brother-in-law, he said. Family takes care of family. Brennan slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were property documents, tax records, and one old iron key dark with rust heavy in a way that seemed wrong for its size. I picked it up. The metal was cold against my palm, solid with the kind of weight that comes from being forged instead of cast. A Hugo key, the kind Dad used for everything important. Why would he do this? I asked. Brennan looked at me for a long moment. He told me that each of his children was receiving exactly what they deserved and exactly what they needed, he said. He said you in particular would understand what to do with it, even if you didn't know that yet. Vernon stood, buttoned his jacket, came around the table and patted my shoulder, the kind of gesture a man gives to someone he's already dismissed. You were always the responsible one, he said. The one who showed up. But responsible doesn't always mean rewarded. They left together, already discussing lunch plans and flight times, their laughter echoing down the stairwell, like coins falling into a bank vault. I sat there with the envelope, the key, and my wife beside me. I'd taught auto shop for 28 years. I knew when something didn't fit right, when a weld looked clean on the surface but was weak underneath, when an engine ran smooth but was burning oil where you couldn't see it. The key weighed maybe 4 ounces, but it felt like it carried 30 years of questions I'd never thought to ask. My father had paid $9 for that workshop at a tax auction in 2016. Now he'd left it specifically to me, with a 24-month lock and a lawyer's cryptic promise that I'd understand what to do with it. The only problem was I had no idea what he meant. But I was about to find out. The silence in my 1998 Ford F-150 was louder than anything my siblings had said in that law office. Lorraine sat beside me with her hands folded in her lap, staring out at Route 19 as it unwound through the West Virginia hills. 2 hours back to Charleston. The first 45 minutes passed without a word between us, just the sound of tires on wet asphalt and the occasional truck rattling past in the opposite direction. Sleet had started falling somewhere around the Clarksville County line, even though it was mid-July and that shouldn't have been possible. But nothing about this day made sense, so I just turned the wipers on and kept driving. I'd been the kid who fixed things, the brother who attended community college while Vernon got Vanderbilt, the son who checked on the folks every Sunday while Marlene married into Kentucky money and got a $40,000 wedding reception at some country club with a name I couldn't pronounce. Someone needed to be near the folks Dad had said when I was 17. Someone needed to stay, so I did. Why a workshop? Lorraine finally asked. I glanced at her. She was still looking out the window. He could have left you cash like the others, she said. Why a goddamn workshop in the middle of nowhere, Ohio? I don't know yet, I said. And I didn't. That was the truth. The key sat in my jacket pocket heavy as a stone. We didn't talk the rest of the way home. 4 days later, Faye came over for our Friday evening dinner like she always did. 25 and sharp-eyed from 3 years of ER nursing at Charleston General. She was the one who cut through her mother's fear with practical wisdom. We sat around the old Formica table in our one-story house, the kind of suburban Charleston place where teachers live when they've paid their mortgage on time for 30 years. Yellow fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Monthly bills scattered across one end of the table because Lorraine had been sorting them when Faye arrived. Let's sell the workshop after the 24 months, Lorraine said, picking at her pot roast. Walk away. Forget all of it. Dad, go look at it at least once, Faye said. She had her mother's dark hair, but my stubbornness. Grandpa never did anything without a reason. He left Vernon $15 million, Lorraine said. What's the reason for that? Maybe the reason's different for each of them, Faye said. My daughter understood something her mother didn't want to, that my father had left me a question, not an answer. What does it mean to be the responsible one in a family that measures responsibility in dollar signs? I'll drive up next week, I said. Take a look. 2 days, maybe 3. If it's just an old building, we'll figure out what to do with it after the restriction lifts. Lorraine opened her mouth to argue, but my phone buzzed on the table. FaceTime call. Finn's name lit up the screen. I answered. My youngest son appeared in the small rectangle 19, and always the smartest of my three kids with that easy smile that had gotten him out of trouble since he was 6. He was in his Marshall University dorm room, textbooks stacked on the desk behind him. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Mom, Faye." "Hey, baby," Lorraine said, her whole face softening the way it always did for Finn. "I heard about Grandpa's will," he said. "That's rough. The workshop thing." "It's fine," I said. "Actually, that's kind of why I'm calling." He leaned closer to the camera. "I've got a long weekend coming up. Can I come visit when you go check it out? I always wanted to see Grandpa's place." I blinked. "You never mentioned wanting to see it before," I said. Finn laughed easy natural, the way he always did when someone caught him off guard. I know, he said. "Late bloomer, I guess. Just feels important now that he's gone." You know, Faye was watching him through the screen with that nurse look she got when patients were lying about their pain levels. "And I'm probably going solo this time," I said, "just to get the lay of the land." "It's sure," Finn said. "But if you change your mind, I'm around. Love you guys." He hung up before any of us could respond. Lorraine stared at the dark screen. "That was odd," Faye said quietly. I didn't answer. I was thinking about the last time Finn had mentioned his grandfather, which was never. The last time he'd visited his grandmother, which had been 2 Christmases ago, and only because Lorraine had threatened to cancel his tuition check if he didn't. We finished dinner without talking about it. Faye left around 8. I told Lorraine I'd drive to Athens County next Wednesday, stay 2 nights at a motel, and be back by Friday evening. She nodded, didn't argue anymore. That night we washed dishes together the way we'd done for 30 years, her washing me, drying the rhythm so automatic we didn't need to talk. The kitchen smelled like dish soap and old coffee. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead like a trapped insect. "Why does the boy want to go with you?" Lorraine asked. I rinsed a plate under hot water, watching the suds spiral down the drain. "He hasn't even bothered to visit his grandmother in years," she said. "Now he wants to see a workshop he's never cared about." I'd spent 28 years teaching teenagers. I could spot a lie at 30 paces. I could read hesitation in a handshake evasion, in the way someone looked past your shoulder instead of meeting your eyes. But this was my son. "I don't know," I said. She handed me another plate. Our hands touched briefly under the water, warm and familiar and worried. "And maybe he's just growing up," I said, realizing what he lost. "Maybe," Lorraine said, but neither of us believed it. I stood there with dish soap on my hands and my wife's question hanging in the air like smoke. "Why does the boy want to go with you?" I didn't have an answer, but somewhere in the back of my mind, in the place where a teacher stores 30 years of watching students lie about homework and test scores and why they were late, I knew I should. And that scared me more than anything my siblings had done in that law office. Wednesday morning, I'd drive to Athens County alone and find out what my father had really left me. I spent the weekend trying to forget Lorraine's question about Finn. By Wednesday morning, I was 2 hours into Ohio, with the windows cracked and the radio turned off. The gravel road to 47 Mill Hollow Road ran 2 miles off the county route through bare, deciduous forest and fog, thick enough to taste. I turned at the rusted mailbox, leaning sideways with a barely visible 47 painted in faded white. 100 yards in the workshop came into view. 2-story cinder block building, maybe 40 by 60 feet, with a tin roof gone rust red. Wide garage door in front, 6 windows along the sides. An old wooden barn stood beside it, mostly skeleton now. Small cabins sat 50 yards beyond, 5 acres sloping down through overgrown grass toward Hocking Creek. The photograph Brennan gave me hadn't done it justice. Or maybe it had, and I just hadn't wanted to see what my father had actually left me. I stopped the truck 50 yards out and cut the engine. 32 degrees according to the dashboard, even though it was late July. The fog swallowed sound until all I could hear was wind through the oak trees and that distant creek. My brother called this a condemned building. But condemned things don't sit this quiet, this waiting. I climbed out and walked the perimeter first, the way I'd learned to assess Dad's properties. Teacher's habit. Look before you touch. The stone foundation was old but solid. Exterior walls showed fire damage on the right side, scorch marks climbing 10 feet up, but the structure itself was intact. The porch had cosmetic damage boards warped and weathered, but it held my weight. I'd taught auto shop for 28 years. I knew how to read a building the way I knew how to read a weld, looking for the places where stress concentrated, where failure would start. This wasn't failure, this was patience. The barn was mostly gone, roof-collapsed walls leaning, but the workshop stood straight, waiting. What kind of man maintains a workshop this carefully, and then tells his family he's abandoned it? I pulled the Hugo key from my jacket pocket. The lock was a deadbolt commercial grade installed recently. The key turned smooth, too smooth. The door opened without a sound. The hinges had been oiled recently. Within the last month, maybe less. My father died 2 weeks ago, but someone had maintained this place after he was already gone. I stepped inside. The workshop smelled like machine oil and old metal, and something else I couldn't quite place, maybe sawdust, maybe just time. Light came through the windows in bars of gray morning, illuminating dust suspended in the air. But what stopped me cold wasn't the dust. It was the equipment. 1962, South Bend lathe, 9-inch swing, perfectly aligned. I recognized it from Dad's old photographs the year I was born. 1975, Bridgeport milling machine. Series 1 with the original manual feed. 1948, Walker Turner drill. Press the kind you couldn't find anymore, except in museums. MIG and TIG welding stations against the far wall, both with full gas bottles and clean torch heads. 16-foot workbench running the length of the north wall surface scarred, but swept clean. Tool drawers organized with the kind of precision that comes from a man who knows exactly where everything belongs. Pegboards covering every wall, tools arranged by size and function. Wrenches graduating from 1/4-inch to 2-inch screwdrivers, sorted by head-type measuring instruments hung in careful rows. Everything was clean. Not clean like abandoned, clean like maintained. Dust on the surfaces a week's worth, maybe 2, but the tools themselves were neatly arranged. Recently used, recently cared for. This wasn't auto repair equipment. This was precision metal work, industrial-level machining capability. I stood in the center of that workshop, with my breath fogging in the cold air, and tried to understand what I was seeing. My siblings had described this as a worthless, condemned building, a joke, a final insult. But this, gravel crunched outside. I walked to the door and saw a 2002 Chevy pickup rolling to a stop beside my F-150. The driver climbed out slowly, Earl Dutton 70, and weathered as the Appalachian hills themselves, with the careful movements of a man whose joints remembered every cold winter. Carhartt jacket worn thin at the elbows. He saw me standing in the doorway and raised one hand in greeting. "Oh, looking for Rufus?" he called. "Left a tractor gearbox for repair 3 weeks back. Came to pick it up." I walked out onto the porch. "And I'm Wendell," I said. "Rufus's son. I'm sorry to tell you, but my father passed 2 weeks ago." Earl stopped walking, stood there in the gravel driveway for a full minute without moving, just staring at the workshop like he was trying to process information that didn't fit. Then he walked to the porch and sank into one of the old chairs. "Your father was the only mechanic in 5 counties who'd touch a 1962 Alice Chalmers without quoting me $1,000, he said finally. "Damn shame." "Did he show any signs of illness when you last saw him?" I asked. Earl looked at me strangely. "Oh, illness. Last time I saw him 3 weeks back, he was fitting a new throwout bearing on a Mustang, sharp as a tack. I'd spent 28 years teaching auto shop. I knew the difference between a man who was fading and a man who could install a throwout bearing with steady hands. That job requires precision, requires strength, requires eyes that can see thread pitch and fingers that don't shake. My sister said Dad had been weak for half a year. Said he'd been forgetting things, losing his edge, fading the way old men do when death starts circling. But this man saw him 3 weeks ago, sharp as a tack, doing work that required everything Marlene said he'd already lost. One of them was lying. And I knew the man sitting in that porch chair with his weathered Carhartt and his tractor gearbox, waiting for a mechanic who'd never fix it, had absolutely no reason to lie to me. The next question was, what else had my siblings lied about? Earl drove away with his tractor gearbox, still waiting for a mechanic who'd never fix it. I stood on that porch for 10 minutes after the sound of his engine faded, thinking about what Marlene had said and what Earl had seen. One of them was lying. I was starting to think I knew which one. Thursday morning, I started at the east wall with a notebook and pen, the way I'd started every semester for 28 years, with a plan to understand exactly what I was working with. I'd taught auto shop long enough to know how to conduct a proper inspection. Start at one end, work to the other, document everything, look for what doesn't fit. The 1962 South Bend lathe sat first in line 9-inch swing, perfectly aligned on its cast iron bed, ways cleaned and oiled. I ran my hand along the carriage, smooth as glass. This machine could hold tolerances to 1/1000th of an inch. Next, 1975 Bridgeport milling machine, Series 1 with original manual feed, the kind that could mill steel to aerospace specifications if you knew what you were doing. 1948 Walker Turner drill press, 20-inch throat original motor, still purring when I tested the switch. MIG and TIG welding stations against the far wall, both with full gas bottles, torch heads, clean regulators calibrated. 16-foot workbench running the north wall surface scarred from decades of use, but swept clean. 12 tool drawers organized with the precision I demanded from my own student socket sets, on the left micrometers and calipers in the middle, hand files on the right. Every drawer inventoried, every tool in its place. My father had organized this shop the way I organized my classroom. Nothing random, everything with purpose. These weren't consumer-grade tools. That South Bend could machine parts for satellites. The Bridgeport could cut titanium if you fed it right. I moved to the northeast corner, where a separate desk sat against the wall. Engineering blueprints lay rolled in wooden slots above the desk. I pulled one out, unrolled it on the surface. Precise mechanical drawings with dimension callouts, tolerance specifications, material grades. Not carburetor rebuilds, not transmission housings. Hydraulic valve bodies, precision gear assemblies, aerospace fasteners. I pulled another. Patent copy, federal contract number in the margin. Defense work. Another. Medical device components with FDA specification references. My father hadn't been running a corner garage. He'd been running a precision manufacturing operation, the kind that required security clearances for certain contracts that commanded premium prices that government agencies paid close attention to. What kind of precision manufacturing operation runs in the middle of rural Ohio, with no employees, no advertising, and clients who don't officially exist? I set the blueprints aside and opened the desk drawers. Small adjacent office really, just a closet with a chair contained a leather-bound customer book. 30 years of entries documenting clients and invoices. I sat down and started reading. Most entries were normal, expected. Harold Mitchell, Coolville, rebuilt Farmall. H engine $850. Athens Manufacturing, custom hydraulic cylinder for boiler $1,200. Jefferson Sawmill, precision bushings $340. Reasonable prices, reasonable services, phone numbers, addresses, contact names. Then I hit the recurring entry. KLLC monthly contract, $4,200. No address, no contact name, no service description beyond those two words, monthly contract. I flipped forward. KLLC monthly contract, $4,200. Next month. KLLC monthly contract, $4,200. Next month, same entry, every month. I started counting. 8 years. 96 consecutive months, $4,200 each time. I did the math automatically the way a teacher does. 8 times, 12 times, 4,200. $403,200. $403,200. For services this workshop never actually provided to anyone I could identify. I pulled out my phone. Ohio Secretary of State Business Registry. I typed K-LLC. No results. I tried variations. KLLC, K Limited Liability Company, Kenneth LLC. Nothing. I broadened the search. Any business in Athens County starting with K. 24 results, none of them KLLC. I expanded to all of Ohio. Hundreds of results. I scrolled through them all. Nothing matched. The Ohio Secretary of State database showed every registered LLC going back 40 years. Inactive businesses were marked, dissolved with dates and reasons. But KLLC didn't show up at all, not even as historical record. Not dissolved, not inactive, never registered. That's not oversight. That's not accidental. I'd taught mathematics to teenagers who thought they could hide failing grades by not turning in assignments. I knew what numbers looked like when someone was lying with them. I knew what absence meant when it should have been presence. $403,200. You don't pay that kind of money through a company that doesn't officially exist unless you're hiding something. And you don't hide something that thoroughly unless what you're doing is worth more than the cost of hiding it. When something doesn't officially exist in a database designed to record everything, there are two possibilities. Either it never did, or someone spent considerable effort making sure it disappeared. I sat in that small office with the customer ledger open in front of me and the phone screen glowing in the dim light. KLLC, $4,200 a month. 8 years, $403,200. For services this workshop never actually provided, but the ledger proved it was real. My father had documented it in his own hand every month for 8 years. He wasn't the kind of man who kept false records. He wasn't the kind of man who wrote down things that didn't happen. So it happened. The money was real. The transactions were real. The question wasn't whether KLLC existed. The question was who KLLC actually was, and what $400,000 had been buying all those years, and why my father had left me a workshop full of evidence that someone had tried very hard to erase. I had a feeling I was about to find out whether I wanted to or not. I spent Thursday night in a motel in Athens trying to figure out what my father had been involved in. By Friday evening, I'd stopped trying and decided to start looking. I heard Lorraine's Honda CR-V on the gravel drive just as the sun was dropping behind the western ridge. She pulled up beside my truck with Faye in the passenger seat. 2 suitcases in back, cleaning supplies, and a slow cooker that meant my wife had decided to stay the following week, whether I wanted help or not. Faye climbed out first and walked straight into the workshop without asking permission, stood in the center of the floor with her hands on her hips turning slowly. "Dad, this is gorgeous," she said. "Look at this setup that's a 1962 South Bend, isn't it?" I blinked. "You remember the model years." "I grew up watching you teach auto shop," she said. "You think I didn't pay attention?" Lorraine was more pragmatic, went straight to the cabin and started checking plumbing and electricity. "Water's disconnected," she called out 10 minutes later. "Electricity's off. We're going to need professionals before this is habitable." The sun set over the Appalachian Hills in bars of orange and red through the workshop windows. Long shadows stretched across the concrete floor. The South Bend lathe looked like something out of a museum in that light, ancient and purposeful and waiting. We ate first slow cooker spaghetti dinner at the small cabin table with paper plates and plastic forks because Lorraine hadn't brought real dishes. "So what did you find?" Faye asked. I told them about the customer book, about KLLC, about the monthly payments totaling $403,200 over 8 years. Faye set down her fork. "Did you cross-reference KLLC against any business in Ohio?" she asked. "It might be a shell, a front company." "I checked the Secretary of State registry," I said. "Doesn't exist, not dissolved, not inactive, never registered." Lorraine put her hand over mine. "Don't go down a rabbit hole," she said. "We came here to clean up and decide what to do with the place, not play detective." "Someone paid Dad over $400,000 through a company that doesn't officially exist," I said. "And that's exactly why we should walk away," Lorraine said. But Faye was already pulling out her phone typing. How far down does a rabbit hole go when the entrance is $400,000 and the company paying it doesn't officially exist? Saturday morning, I was checking the workshop's electrical panel when I heard tires on gravel. Virgil Knox climbed out of a 1996 Ford Bronco with the deliberate movements of a man who never rushed to judgment. 68 and tall with pale blue eyes that had seen 30 years of Athens County secrets. Old Carhartt jacket worn thin at the elbows. He walked straight to me without introducing himself. "How well did you know your father?" he asked. No greeting, no condolences, just the question. "Well enough," I said. When was the last time you visited?" 3 months ago, before he died." You here to flip the place quick or actually do something with it, Morst?" "Dole." I looked at him for a long moment. "I haven't decided yet," I said, "but I don't do anything quick." He studied me, the way I used to study students who had been caught cheating, looking for the tells, the way tells the small omissions that came before the big ones. "Virgil Knox," he said finally, "friend of your father's, former Athens County Sheriff for 30 years. "Former. Retired 10 years back," he said. "Your old man was a complicated son of a bitch, had reasons for things that didn't always look like reasons." He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. Handwritten phone number, nothing else. "Just call me if you find anything in there that doesn't fit," he said. "It's fine what you'll know." He climbed back in the Bronco and drove away before I could ask another question. I'd given hundreds of tests to thousands of students over 28 years. I knew what it looked like when someone was testing me back. That hadn't been a social call. That had been an interview. Sunday at noon, I drove into Athens and found the Mountain Mug Cafe on Main Street. Small place, maybe 8 tables, smell of coffee and bacon grease, and something baking in back. Sunday crowd filled most of the seats. Locals who looked like they'd been coming here for decades. Celeste Harding, 50, with short silver hair and round glasses perched on a blue flannel shirt, set down my coffee and said quietly, "You're his son, aren't you? You have his hands, same way of holding things. You knew my father. He came every Saturday morning for 15 years, she said. Black coffee and biscuit, sat for an hour reading the paper. Quiet man, but he listened more than people thought." Did he have any friends here? I asked. Anyone he checked on? Celeste hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the corner booth. A woman sat there reading the newspaper, 53 and composed, with dark hair pulled back and hands that held the paper without trembling. She looked up once when Celeste glanced her direction. Then she stood, folded the newspaper, left $5 on the table, and walked past me without once meeting my eyes. The bell over the door chimed when she left. "Who is she?" I asked. Celeste picked up the $5 and tucked it in her apron. "Not my story to tell," she said. "Maybe yours someday." "What does that mean?" "It means your father had a life here you didn't know about," she said. "And the people who knew him are watching to see what kind of man you are before they decide whether to tell you." She refilled my coffee without asking and walked away. I sat there for 20 minutes watching the door where that woman had left. She hadn't looked at me, hadn't acknowledged me, but I felt certain she knew exactly who I was. The retired sheriff had tested me like a cop interviews a suspect, and then left me a phone number with instructions to call when I found something that doesn't fit. The cafe owner knew exactly who my father was, but wouldn't tell me who that woman was. And that woman, she'd walked past me without looking, but I felt she knew exactly who I was. I wasn't just investigating my father's workshop anymore. I was investigating a man I thought I'd known for 55 years. And the people who actually knew him were watching to see if I was worthy of the truth. They wanted to know if I was worthy of the truth. By Monday morning, I decided the only way to prove that was to find it myself. I knew old craftsmen hid things in specific places, and that's where I went, looking for what my father had hidden. False bottom drawers, hollow handle compartments, fake floors under workbenches, hidden shelves behind pegboards. I'd taught vocational skills for 28 years. I knew every trick students used to hide cigarettes in their toolboxes. I knew every place a machinist might stash a bottle during Prohibition. Old habits don't die, they just get passed down through generations of men who work with their hands. I started at the east wall and worked methodically left to right. Checked every drawer in the tool cabinet for false bottoms, tapped the wood-measured depths, compared exterior dimensions to interior space. Nothing. Inspected the workbench for hollow compartments underneath, ran my hands along the underside, feeling for seams or hinges. Nothing. Examined the lathe and milling machine bases for hidden panels. Old equipment sometimes had maintenance hatches that doubled as storage. Nothing. 3 hours, nothing. Then I saw it. The large pegboard behind the main workbench, 8 feet wide, 4 feet tall, covered with tools arranged in careful rows. I'd looked at it a dozen times, but I hadn't looked at the screws. 2 screws at the top left corner, 2 at the bottom right. The wear pattern was different. The other screws holding the pegboard had paint buildup around their heads, years of dust and grime settled into the grooves. But these 4 were cleaner, turned more recently. I grabbed a screwdriver from the bench. The screws came out easily, too easily for something that had been in place for decades. Someone had removed this pegboard within the last few months. I lifted it carefully away from the wall. Behind it wasn't a hidden room, or a safe, or stacks of cash. Just normal cinder block wall gray, and solid and unremarkable. But wrapped around the top left screw was a small piece of yellowed paper folded twice. I unwrapped it. My father's handwriting. Careful block letters he'd used on technical drawings for 50 years. K-LLC equals K, open bracket E, NNETH, close bracket dash, L, open bracket, LC, close bracket. Ask Ethan. Ethan, the sheriff who'd shown up Saturday morning asking if I knew my father, the man who'd told me to call when I found something that didn't fit. Virgil Knox, former Athens County Sheriff. Ethan was probably his first name, Ethan Virgil Knox, or Virgil Ethan Knox, the way old families did middle names. My father had left me a breadcrumb, Not just any breadcrumb, a deliberate connection linking the mystery company to someone named Kenneth, and directing me to the one person in Athens who might actually tell me the truth. What kind of father leaves his son a breadcrumb trail to a 30-year criminal conspiracy involving his own children? I set the pegboard aside and went back to the tool cabinet. If Dad had left one clue, there might be more. I checked every drawer again this time, looking for anything out of place. Tax records from the 80s, old invoices filed chronologically, maintenance logs for the equipment. Bottom drawer, filed under invoices from 1987 to 1988. Small leather-bound ledger, 4 inches by 6, old enough that the leather had gone soft and dark with age. I pulled it out and opened it. 30 years of monthly entries. 3 columns visible at first glance, service description. Customer, amount. Every entry the same. KLLC, monthly contract, $4,200. But there was a 4th column on the far right edge written in smaller handwriting along the margin. Real source. I traced my finger down the entries. Kenneth, drug dollars. Kenneth, dirty dollars. Senator pass-through. Cayman wire. Kenneth, offshore. Senator campaign. 30 years, every month, every transaction flagged with its true criminal source. This wasn't just a customer ledger. This was a parallel record documenting what was really happening behind every transaction my father had recorded in the public book. My father hadn't been an accidental front for money laundering. He'd known exactly what was happening, and he documented every single cent of it. I grabbed my laptop from the office and opened it on the workbench. Searched Senator Quentin Whitfield, Kentucky. Ballotpedia profile loaded first. Quentin Kenneth Whitfield, born 1974. Kentucky State Senator, elected 2010. Married to Marlene Gray Strickland, 1997. Middle name Kenneth. KLLC, Kenneth LLC. The senator wasn't just my sister's husband. He was the K in Kenneth LLC. He'd been laundering money through my father's shop since the year he married into our family. I scrolled through the ledger again, checking dates. KLLC entries started appearing in 1997, same year as the marriage. For 27 years, every month, someone had been paying my father to run dirty money through this workshop. And my father had spent those same 27 years quietly documenting every transaction, every true source, every criminal dollar that flowed through his equipment. I'd taught 28 years of auto shop students to show their work to document every measurement, every calculation, every step of the process. My father had been showing his work. He'd just been documenting a crime instead of a carburetor rebuild. He'd known. The whole time he'd known exactly what Marlene and the senator were doing. He'd known about the drug money and the offshore accounts and the campaign pass-throughs. And he'd left it all to me, not as an inheritance, as an evidence locker. The workshop wasn't worth anything compared to what my siblings got. But what it contained, this ledger, these records, this 30-year paper trail of criminal activity, was worth everything if someone knew how to use it. My father had spent 3 decades preparing for this exact day. The day when someone trustworthy would walk through that door and find what he'd hidden. Someone who'd actually care enough to look behind the pegboard and check the bottom drawer and connect Kenneth to K, LLC to the senator. He'd known I'd come. He'd known I'd search. He'd known I was the only one who would. The only question left was, what was I supposed to do with evidence that would destroy my own family? I was about to find out just how far my father expected me to go. I spent Monday night staring at that ledger, trying to decide what to do with 30 years of evidence against my own family. By Tuesday morning, someone else had decided for me. The black BMW came up the gravel drive like a shark circling rural water. I was working in the workshop when I heard the engine too smooth, too expensive for Athens County back roads, stood up from the lathe and walked to the door. Darlene Frost stepped from the BMW with the kind of practiced professional smile that came from years of making clients feel comfortable while calculating billable hours. 40 dark suit leather briefcase heels that had no business on gravel. "Mr. Strickland," she called. "I'm Darlene Frost, solo practitioner here in Athens. I happen to hear you're the new owner of this property. Thought I'd stop by and offer a free consultation regarding the 24-month restriction." I walked out onto the porch. "That's thoughtful," I said. "How did you hear about the restriction?" "Athens is a small county," she said. "Probate filings are public record. I keep an eye on estate matters, part of building a practice in a rural market." The answer was smooth, too smooth. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I'm still getting my bearings." Of course. She handed me a business card. I've handled inheritance disputes before. If your siblings contest the distribution or the property valuation, I can help navigate those complications. I looked at the card. Ohio State Bar Association logo, contact information, credentials that look legitimate. My siblings, I asked. Vernon and Marlene are listed in the probate filing, she said. It's public information. I just wanted you to know that if family dynamics become difficult, you have options. She left 10 minutes later with a promise to think about formal meeting next week. I went straight to the cabin and pulled up the Ohio State Bar website on my laptop. Darlene Frost, admitted 2010, solo practice Athens, legitimate. But I opened my notebook and wrote, possible ally. Verify everything she says against records before trusting, timing suspicious. One day after I found the ledger, a lawyer shows up offering free help with sibling disputes. How many coincidences does it take before you stop calling them coincidences and start calling them surveillance? Tuesday evening, I was eating a simple dinner in the cabin when my phone vibrated. Vernon, calling from Dallas. I answered. Hey, he said, voice carrying that casually concerned tone I recognized as a red flag from teaching lying teenagers for 30 years. Just checking in, find anything worth keeping out there? I know Dad kept a lot of junk. Nothing major yet, I said. Lots of old tools, customer records. Customer records, Vernon repeated. Yeah, he was never great at organizing that stuff. You know there's old paperwork in that shop. Some of it could create misunderstandings, make Dad look bad. Best to just bag it and burn it. No one needs to see how disorganized he got toward the end. I went silent, listening. Wendell, you there? I'm here. Look, Dad wasn't sharp in his last years, Vernon continued. If you find anything weird, anything that doesn't make sense, call me first, before you do anything. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Call me first meant money would follow cooperation. I'd heard that tone before, from students offering to help me grade papers if I'd look the other way on their cheating. I'll think about it, I said. Vernon shifted tactics. I could help you out financially, he said. Workshop's a money pit. $50,000 cash could make your life easier, cover renovation costs, property taxes, whatever you need. $50,000 for a building appraised at $32,000 to burn unspecified paperwork that supposedly didn't matter. That's generous, I said carefully. Family takes care of family, Vernon said. Just think about it. Ann Wendell. If you find old customer books or ledgers or anything like that, don't show them to anyone. Some of Dad's clients might not appreciate their business being discussed after all these years. I'll keep that in mind. I hung up, stood in the dark cabin with the phone in my hand and processed what had just happened. My brother knew about the ledgers. Not just that they existed, he knew what they contained. He knew enough to be scared enough to offer me $50,000 for silence. I'd taught 28 years of teenagers who thought they could hide their intentions with casual tones and reasonable explanations. I knew exactly what it sounded like when someone was lying to my face. I knew what desperation sounded like when it was dressed up as generosity. Vernon had just told me there were papers in the workshop that could make Dad look bad. He had offered me more than the workshop's entire appraised value to burn them without looking. That meant he knew exactly what those papers were. It meant he knew about the parallel ledger with the real sources, about Kenneth LLC, about the drug money and the Cayman wires and the Senator pass-throughs. And if Vernon knew, then Marlene knew. And if Marlene knew then, Senator Quentin Kenneth Whitfield knew. They'd all known what my father was documenting. They'd known for years, maybe decades. And now they were watching to see what I'd do with it. The lawyer showing up one day after I found the ledger wasn't coincidence. It was reconnaissance. They'd sent someone to assess the situation to offer help that would give them eyes on my next moves. Vernon's call wasn't brotherly concern. It was the opening bid in a negotiation they'd been preparing for since the moment Dad wrote that will. $50,000 to burn evidence. The question was, how long had my siblings been planning for someone to find what my father had hidden? And what would they do when I didn't take the money? Vernon wanted to pay me to burn evidence. By Wednesday afternoon, I'd realized my siblings were just getting started. Marlene called, with the voice she used when she wanted something soft, where Vernon had been direct sweet where he'd been threatening. I've been thinking about the funeral, she said, about how Dad would have hated seeing us divided, about how families can fracture over money and inheritance. I was in the workshop office standing at the window looking out at Hocking Creek, listening. I want to invite you and Lorraine and the kids to Thanksgiving in Lexington, she continued. I don't want what happened in that law office to define us. That's thoughtful, I said. 5 minutes of conversation about family childhood memories of Dad working in his shop. All of it tactical, all of it building to something. My sister had always been better at manipulation than my brother. Vernon used threats. Marlene used sympathy. Both wanted the same thing. Actually, she said, Quentin's here. He wanted to say hello. The senator came on the line with that smooth political voice I'd heard on campaign ads. Wendell, he said, good to talk to you. We've been thinking about your situation with that workshop. Property like that rural needing major investment can become a real burden. It's manageable, I said. We'd like to make a generous offer to take it off your hands, he said. $200,000 cash, immediate closing. You walk away, no headaches, no legal complications. $200,000 for a property appraised at $32,000. I looked out the window at the workshop I was standing in. The building Vernon had called condemned. The inheritance Marlene had written off as worthless. Your father wasn't himself in those final years, the senator continued. Sometimes what people write in wills doesn't reflect reality. $200,000 could pay off your mortgage, set up college funds for the kids. I appreciate the offer, I said, but there's a 24-month restriction on the sale. Restrictions can be negotiated, he said, with the right legal counsel. I'll keep that in mind. I hung up and wrote in my notebook $200,000 offer for $32,000 property. They know it's worth more. Fear economics. What does it mean when 3 family members offer you a combined $250,000 for something they claim is worthless? Thursday evening, I was eating dinner in the cabin with Lorraine and Faye when we heard a car on the gravel. Finn's Honda Civic. My youngest son climbed out with that easy smile that had gotten him out of trouble since he was 6. 19 smartest of my 3 kids supposed to be at Marshall University 4 hours away. He's had a long weekend, he called. Wanted to come help out, see what Grandpa left behind. Lorraine's face lit up the way it always did when Finn showed up. Faye watched him more carefully. He came into the cabin carrying a box. And I brought you something, Dad, he said. Found it at an estate sale near campus. Vintage caliper set, Starrett brand. $300 if it was a dime. Finn, you can't afford this, I said. He had some scholarship money left over. He said, figured you could use it for the workshop. We ate dinner together. Lorraine asked about classes. Faye asked about his roommates. I watched. Finn's eyes kept drifting to the window, to the workshop visible across the gravel drive in the fading light. So, what have you found so far? He asked. Any cool old tools, paperwork Grandpa was so disorganized? Some interesting equipment, I said. Nothing extraordinary. And where do you keep the stuff you find? He asked. Old tools, paperwork, whatever. I want to help organize. Make it easier for you. Faye's eyes narrowed slightly. We're still cataloging, I said. You never mentioned wanting to see the workshop before, Faye said to her brother. What changed? Grandpa died, Finn said. Made me think about family history, stuff we don't pay attention to until it's too late. The answer was smooth, rehearsed. After dinner, Finn helped clear plates. Then he asked casually, Can I sleep in the workshop tonight? It's cool, like a sleepover. I always wanted to do that when I was a kid. Feel close to Grandpa. I looked at him. It's not safe, I said. No heat, structural concerns from the fire damage. You'll stay in the cabin. Something flashed in his eyes. Annoyance, frustration. Then the easy smile came back. Sure, Dad, whatever you think. Lorraine insisted he take the guest room. Faye retreated to the cabin bedroom early. Finn went to bed around 10. I stood in the kitchen with my wife washing dishes in the dark. She'd turned off the overhead light so we could see the stars through the window. Why does the boy want to go in there? She whispered. I rinsed a plate. He hasn't even bothered to visit his grandmother in years, she said. Now suddenly wants to sleep in dead grandfather's workshop. I didn't answer, because I was thinking the same thing. I'd spent 28 years teaching auto shop. I knew when a student was lying. I knew when someone wanted something specific. I knew what it looked like when a kid showed up with expensive tools they couldn't afford and stories that didn't quite add up. But he was my son, the one I'd pampered most, the smartest of my 3 kids, the one who'd always been able to talk his way out of trouble with that easy smile and quick thinking. 4-hour drive on a Thursday night to help out. $300 gift he couldn't afford. Probing questions about where I kept the paperwork. Request to sleep in the workshop. I'm changing the locks tomorrow, I said quietly. Lorraine's hands stopped moving in the dishwater. You think, she started. I shook my head, because I didn't want to finish that sentence. Didn't want to think what my brain was starting to whisper. That my youngest son, the one I'd love most, the one who'd never shown interest in my father or his workshop, or anything to do with Athens County, had just driven 4 hours to ask if he could sleep in the one place that contained evidence his aunt and uncle desperately wanted to destroy. I knew when someone was lying to me, but he's my son, and that scared me more than anything Vernon or Marlene could do. Because if I was right about what I was starting to suspect, my family hadn't just betrayed my father, they'd recruited my own child to finish the job. If my son was spying for my sister, I needed to find what they were looking for before he did, which meant searching the workshop when he couldn't watch. I waited until 2 in the morning, when I was certain Finn wouldn't wake, before I went back out to the workshop with my tape measure and a borrowed metal detector from Glenn Sawyer's garage. The north wall had bothered me since the first day. Something about the proportions didn't sit right with my vocational teacher's eye. I measured the interior wall, 42 feet. Walked outside and measured the exterior, 45 feet. 3-foot discrepancy. Back inside, I started tapping the wall section by section, listening for hollow spots. Ran the metal detector along the cinder block, looking for hidden frames or reinforcements. The studs behind the third tool cabinet from the left showed an irregular pattern. Too much metal where there shouldn't be any. I pulled the tools off the cabinet. Socket sets, wrenches, hand files, everything organized with Dad's precision. Set them carefully on the workbench. Then I examined the cabinet itself. It was bolted to something. Not the wall, the floor. I knelt down and ran my fingers along the base. Found a track industrial roller track, the kind used for heavy sliding doors. My father had engineered a sliding door disguised as a tool cabinet. I stood up and checked the cabinet's frame, looking for a release mechanism, a hidden latch, anything that would. Upper left corner, small indentation that looked like damage from years of use. But when I pressed it, I felt something give. Click. The entire cabinet shifted. I grabbed the right edge and pulled. The cabinet slid sideways on the track with a low metallic scraping sound that seemed loud enough to wake the dead. I froze, heart pounding, listening. 30 seconds of absolute silence. No lights came on in the cabin, no movement. Behind the cabinet, a sheet metal panel set, flush with the wall. And in the center, a keyhole disguised as a welding seam, the kind of detail only someone who knew metalwork would recognize. I went to Dad's desk and searched the drawers. Found an old skeleton key in the bottom drawer wrapped in cloth. Back at the panel, the key slid in smooth. Turned. The panel swung inward on pneumatic hinges, the kind that close, slowly, silently, without slamming. Musty air hit my face. The smell of a space that had been sealed for weeks, maybe months. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. 6 feet wide, 4 feet deep, 7 feet tall. A room built into the wall of my father's workshop. I stepped inside. Oak desk against the back wall with an old typewriter. 2 file cabinets legal size standing side by side. Floor safe in the corner, commercial grade Sentry brand, requiring a combination I didn't have. Micro cassette recorder sitting on the desk next to a stack of blank tapes. Pegboard on the left wall with investigation tools hung in careful rows. Cameras, voice recorders, measuring instruments. The room had its own light fixture. I flipped the switch and a bare bulb came on overhead. Ventilation duct cut through the exterior wall and concealed behind a false vent on the outside. My father had run electrical lines, installed proper airflow, built this space to be functional for long-term use. This wasn't something he'd thrown together in a weekend. This was months of work, maybe years. Taped to the inside of the door panel was a handwritten note. I had to steady myself against the door frame to read it. "If you found this, I'm gone. Don't trust the will. Dad." My hands were shaking. I looked at the file cabinets. The first one had 4 drawers each with a typed label. E-transactions, M communications, K structure, legal backup, Vernon, Marlene, Kenneth LLC legal backup. My father had spent years building a case against his own children. The second file cabinet was labeled differently. Timeline 1995 to 2024, source documentation, witness statements, photographic evidence. This wasn't just record keeping, this was investigation. Systematic, methodical, documented investigation with the kind of organization that would hold up in court. I opened the V-Transactions drawer. File folders organized by year, each one thick with papers, bank statements, wire transfer records, property deeds, business and corporation documents. I pulled one at random, 2015, highlighted entries on bank statements showing transfers from Kenneth LLC to Vernon Steakhouse Holdings. Margin notes in Dad's handwriting explaining the laundering mechanism. Cross-references to corresponding entries in the parallel ledger I'd found earlier. This wasn't suspicion. This was proof. 30 years of proof. I closed the drawer and looked around the room again. The safe sat in the corner, waiting. Whatever was inside that safe was important enough that Dad had locked it away even from this already hidden room. The microcassette recorder on the desk had a tape loaded in it. I pressed play. Static. Then my father's voice, weaker than I remembered, but unmistakable. If you're hearing this, you found the room. Good. That means you're the one I thought you'd be. I sat down in the desk chair. I built this over 18 months. The recording continued. Started when the doctor told me I had a year, maybe 2. Knew I needed to leave you something more than just questions. Needed to leave you answers. His breathing was labored on the tape. Vernon and Marlene, they're not the top of this. There's someone else. Someone who's been running this operation since before you were born. The safe has the proof. Combination is your birthday, month, day, year. You'll know what to do with what you find. Click. End of recording. I sat in that chair with my father's voice still echoing in the small space. He'd known he was dying. He'd known his children were criminals. He'd known someone else was pulling the strings. And he'd spent his final year building a secret investigation room in his workshop, documenting everything, organizing evidence, preparing for the day when I would find it. The question that made my hands shake as I stood in that 6x4 space wasn't what he'd found. It was what he'd known was coming. What my father had known was coming was right here in these file cabinets, and I was about to find out just how bad it was. The first file cabinet opened with a metallic click that sounded too loud in the cramped space. Top drawer, 2 bound ledgers, handwritten leather covers, worn soft with handling. KLLC operations, 2010 to 2025. Transfer records. I pulled them both out and set them on the desk. Dad's handwriting. That precise engineer's script I'd seen on technical drawings my whole life. The same careful block letters he'd used to label every tool in his workshop, every drawer in his classroom when he'd taught me welding in high school. I opened KLLC operations first. Cover page listed totals with question marks beside each figure. South Florida, $35 million. Cayman transfers $15 million. Senator Ruding, $8.7 million. Total $58.7 million. Question marks like he wasn't certain, like he'd been trying to verify the numbers, cross-reference them, make sure he had it right before. Before what? Before he died. Before someone found this room. I turned the page. January 2010, first entry. KLLC payment. $4,200. Source South Florida distribution. Drug H. Verified via Vernon Dallas wire transfer pattern. Crossref parallel ledger page 47. February 2010. LLC payment. $4,200. Source Cayman Shell Company offshore dollar. Verified via Marlene Lexington account deposits. Crossref parallel ledger page 48. March 2010, KLLC, payment $4,200. Source Senator campaign, donor routing political dollar. Verified via Quinton, Kentucky, filing discrepancy. Crossref parallel ledger page 49. Page after page, month after month, year after year. Every entry had margin notes, source flags, verification dates, cross-references to other documents. The handwriting was Dad's, every word. Every number, 15 years. I opened transfer records, detailed breakdowns of how money moved. South Florida drug distribution payments coming in as consulting fees to KLLC. Cayman Shell Companies transferring funds through 3 intermediary accounts before landing in Vernon's Steakhouse Holdings. Senator campaign donors who didn't exist, fake names, fake addresses, real money flowing through Marlene's PR firm. Dad had documented the entire mechanism. Not just the totals, but the process, the specific banks, the account numbers, the dates, the people involved. $58.7 million in criminal money laundered through his workshop over 15 years. And he'd recorded every cent of it. I don't remember standing up. Don't remember walking out of the hidden room through the workshop out the door. but I found myself on the gravel driveway at 3:45 in the morning, doubled over, vomiting into the weeds beside my truck. My hands were shaking. The night air was thick and humid, August in Ohio, heavy with moisture, but I couldn't stop shaking. $58.7 million. Drug money, offshore shells, campaign finance fraud. My siblings, my father, my family. I straightened up, wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, and saw the cabin lights come on. Lorraine appeared in the doorway in her robe. "What's wrong?" she called. I couldn't answer. She walked across the gravel to me, saw my face in the workshop light spilling through the open door. "Show me," she said. I led her into the workshop, through the sliding cabinet, into the hidden room. She stood in the center of that 6x4 space, looking at the file cabinets, the desk, the safe, the pegboard of investigation tools. Then she sat down in Dad's chair, and I handed her the KLLC operations ledger. She read in silence for 5 minutes. I watched her face, watched the color drain from her cheeks, watched her hands start to shake the way mine had. My wife had never looked at me with fear before that moment. She closed the ledger carefully, set it on the desk, folded her hands in her lap. "Let's pack everything up," she said, voice quiet, steady. "Burn the workshop, walk away." "Lorraine, these are dangerous people," she said. "Drug traffickers, a sitting senator, they'll destroy us." Dad documented. "Your father is dead," she said. "We're not. Our children aren't. Faye has her whole life ahead of her. And Finn," she stopped, looked at me. "If your son is working for them," she said, "what do you think they'll do to him if you expose this?" I hadn't thought about that. "Maybe your father was selfish," Lorraine continued. "Maybe he never thought about what this would cost you, cost us, cost our family." "He thought about it," I said. "He thought about it for 15 years. That's why he documented everything. So someone could what?" she asked. "Could get killed, could watch their children get killed, could lose everything trying to take down a United States senator who's laundered $58 million. She stood up. "I'm asking you to burn it," she said. "All of it. The ledgers, the files, the recordings. Fill this room with gasoline and burn it to the foundation. Tell your siblings you found nothing. Take their money, walk away." "That's not what Dad wanted." "Your father wanted you to survive," she said. "That's why he left you the workshop, not to make you a target, to give you a choice." She walked to the door of the hidden room, stopped. "I love you," she said. "But if you go forward with this, you're on your own. I won't watch them kill you." She left. I stood in that hidden room with $58.7 million in documented criminal evidence and my wife's ultimatum echoing in the cramped space. My father had left me a roadmap to expose the largest money laundering operation in Kentucky history. My wife was begging me to burn it all and pretend we'd never found it. I didn't know if I could do both. I chose my father's mission. Lorraine stopped speaking to me the next morning. 3 days later, I found the microcassette. It was in the hidden room's desk drawer, labeled in Dad's handwriting, MWM, November 14th, 1998. For the truth. I loaded it into the microcassette recorder, sitting on the desk, and pressed play. Static. Then my father's voice, younger than I remembered, stronger, but carrying weight I'd never heard before. November 14th, 1998. Recording this for, I don't know, for someone, for the truth. His breathing was heavy on the tape. "The apprentice died yesterday at 3 o'clock. Vernon and Marlene were arguing about the books when they shoved him. He fell into the lathe. The official report says accident. It's a lie." I sat frozen in the desk chair. "They begged me to help cover it up," Dad's voice continued. "Said it was an accident, said no one needed to know they'd been arguing, said the boy was careless, and it was his own fault for standing too close. But I saw the marks on his back where they shoved him. I saw the fear in their eyes when they realized what they'd done." Pause. Sound of something being set down, maybe a glass. "God forgive me, I did it. I helped them. Told the sheriff it was operator error. Said the boy must have slipped. Watched his mother cry at the funeral and said nothing." Click. End of recording. I sat in that hidden room with my father's confession echoing in the small space. November 1998. I was 28. Second year teaching auto shop at Athens High School. I remembered the funeral. Small service at a Baptist church on the east side of town. The mother, I could see her now, standing beside the casket in a black dress that looked borrowed, sobbing so hard she could barely stand. "It doesn't make sense," she'd said to anyone who would listen. "He'd operated that lathe since he was 16. He knew what he was doing. This doesn't make sense." I'd attended out of respect for Dad's business, shook hands with the family, offered condolences. Never questioned the accident story, because why would I? Accidents happened in machine shops. Young men got careless. Tragic but not suspicious. Except it wasn't an accident. It was murder. And my father had helped cover it up for 26 years. How many times had I walked past that lathe in Dad's shop without knowing what it had done? Saturday afternoon, I drove to the Athens Public Library. The reference librarian helped me pull up Athens Messenger archives from November 1998 on microfiche. I found it on November 15, 1998, front page below the fold. Old local man dies in machine shop accident. Boyd Mercer, 22 of Athens, died Thursday afternoon in an industrial accident at Strickland Machine Works on Mill Hollow Road. Mercer, an apprentice machinist, was operating a metal lathe when he reportedly slipped and fell into the moving equipment. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Athens County Sheriff Ethan Virgil Knox ruled the death accidental after investigation. This appears to be a tragic case of operator error, Knox stated. No foul play is suspected. Mercer is survived by his mother, Irene Mercer of Athens, and 2 sisters. The mother was quoted extensively. My son was careful. He'd been working with that equipment since he was 16 years old. This doesn't make sense to me. Something's not right. I pulled out my phone and searched current Athens County property records. Irene Mercer, 127 Union Street, Athens, Ohio, age 71. She still lived here. 26 years later, still in the same town, where her son had been murdered and everyone had called it an accident. I printed the article and drove to Celeste's cafe. It was late afternoon. The Saturday crowd had thinned out. Just a few regulars nursing coffee and reading newspapers. Celeste was wiping down tables when I walked in. She looked up, saw my face, and set the rag down. Coffee, she asked. Please. She poured me a cup at the counter. I was the only one sitting there. The cafe felt too warm suddenly, the coffee too bitter. I pulled out the printed article and set it on the counter between us. Celeste glanced at it. Her expression didn't change, but I saw something flash in her eyes. Boyd Mercer, I said quietly. She looked at the article for a long moment, then leaned in close voice, dropping to a whisper. There were 2 witnesses that day, she said. Everyone knew it. 2 witnesses to what really happened, she said. One said it was an accident. The other one never spoke up. She straightened, picked up the coffee pot, refilled my cup, even though it was still half full. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She met my eyes, held them a beat too long. Because you're asking the right questions, she said, and because your father spent 26 years carrying something that wasn't his alone to carry. You knew, I said. You knew it wasn't an accident. And I knew a lot of things, she said. Still do. Question is what you're going to do with what you know. Who was the other witness? I asked. She smiled, sad knowing. You're looking at her, she said. Then she walked away to help another customer, leaving me sitting at that counter with cold coffee and a 26-year-old murder that had just become my problem. Celeste Harding had been in Dad's orbit for decades, running the cafe where everyone gathered, watching everything, knowing everything. If she was the second witness, she'd stayed silent for 26 years while a mother grieved and a killer walked free. The question wasn't why she was telling me now. It was what she wanted in return. The farmhouse in Mercer County sat 5 hours north on a dirt road I almost missed twice. I'd left Athens before dawn, Celeste's confession still ringing in my ears. The address came from a 1999 Athens Messenger follow-up I'd found in the microfiche archives. Irene Mercer had moved to Pennsylvania 6 months after her son's death. The article mentioned grief counseling and a fresh start. It didn't mention she was fleeing with a living son and $40,000 in hush money. The September morning was cool when I pulled up to the weathered 2-story with peeling white paint. Chickens scattered across the yard. A rusted pickup sat beside a newer sedan. I knocked. The man who answered the door was 48 years old, with graying hair and a flannel shirt with the right sleeve pinned at the shoulder. His eyes were clear, but something in them was distant, like he was looking through me rather than at me. Boyd Mercer, I said. He blinked slowly. Who's asking? Wendell Ashford, Matthew Ashford's son. His left hand tightened on the doorframe. You better come in. The living room smelled like coffee and old wood. Irene Mercer appeared from the kitchen, 71 now, white-haired, wearing a cardigan despite the mild weather. Her face went pale when she saw me. He knows, Boyd said simply. She lowered herself into a chair. Your father promised no one would ever find us. My father's dead, I said. And he left me cassette tapes that said, Vernon and Marlene murdered your son in 1998. Except they didn't did they Boyd sat on the couch, his missing arm a stark silhouette. They tried, shoved me into the lathe during an argument about the books. I put my arm up. He gestured to the pinned sleeve, tore it off at the shoulder, crushed my skull against the frame. I don't remember much after that. Matthew found him, Irene said quietly. He was still breathing. Vernon wanted to finish it, said a dead apprentice was easier to bury than a maimed witness. But Matthew said no. He drove Boyd to a clinic 2 counties over paid cash, told them it was a farming accident. Then he came to me. December 1998, Boyd said. His speech was slow, deliberate, like he had to think about each word. Brain injury, can't work much, can't remember some things. But I'm alive. He gave us $40,000, Irene said. Cash, said we had to disappear. New names, new state, never contact anyone from Athens again. He said if Vernon found out Boyd survived, he'd come finish the job. And if we went to the police, Matthew would go to prison as an accessory and Vernon would walk free anyway because Ethan Knox was on the take. I sat there absorbing it. Dad hadn't just covered up a murder. He'd staged a death, relocated witnesses, paid them off, and spent 26 years maintaining the lie. Why tell me this? I asked. Irene's eyes were wet. Because your father's dead, and you deserve to know what kind of man he was. He saved my son's life, but he also made us ghosts. We've been hiding for 28 years. Boyd can't see doctors under his real name. I can't visit my sister's grave. We gave up everything. Boyd looked at me with those distant eyes. Your dad visited once a year, brought cash, checked on us. Last time was July. He looked sick. He was, I said, at cancer. He cried, Boyd said. Said he was sorry. Said Vernon was still dangerous and we had to stay hidden until he was dead too. Then maybe we could come home. Do you know what it feels like when the foundation keeps cracking beneath you? I thanked them and left. The drive back south was a blur. I stopped at a motel in Wheeling, West Virginia because I couldn't keep my hands steady on the wheel. In the bathroom mirror, I looked like a stranger. I pulled out the last envelope Dad had left in the safe. The one marked 1995, your mother. I'd been carrying it for days, afraid to open it. Inside were 3 items, a police report, a coroner's ruling, and a handwritten note. The police report was from October 1995. Cynthia Ashford, 47, found dead in her car at the bottom of a ravine off Route 56. Single vehicle accident. No witnesses. Sheriff Ethan Virgil Knox's signature at the bottom. The coroner ruled it accidental. Blood alcohol level 0. No drugs. Rainy night, slick roads, sharp curve. Dad's note was dated August 2024, written in the shaky hand of his final weeks. She found the forgery ledgers in the attic, confronted Vernon at the workshop, told him she was going to the state police. 3 days later, she drove off Route 56. Ethan ruled it an accident in 4 hours. I knew. I've always known. But I had a son to protect, and Vernon made it clear one word to anyone, and you'd be next. I'm a coward, Wendell. I let them kill your mother, and I spent 29 years pretending it was just bad luck. I'm sorry. The motel room was silent except for the hum of the mini fridge. I called Lorraine. Hey, she said. Her voice was cautious. We hadn't spoken much since the 72-hour fight about what to do with Dad's evidence. Where are you? West Virginia. Boyd Mercer's alive, missing an arm and half his memory, but alive. Dad paid them $40,000 to disappear. Silence. And my mother didn't die in an accident, I said. Vernon killed her because she found the forgery books. I heard her breath catch. Wendell, you said burn it all, I said. You said protect the boys, keep the house, let the past stay buried. What do you do when your wife stops being the person you thought you knew? Honey, Lorraine said, and her voice was steel wrapped in silk. Don't burn it. Don't you dare burn a single page. What changed? Your mother, she said. She tried to do the right thing, and they murdered her for it. If we bury this now, she died for nothing. Our boys deserve to know their grandmother wasn't just unlucky. She was brave. I sat on the motel bed with the police report in my hand, and my father's confession in my lap, and the truth spreading through my chest like poison. Vernon Ashford had killed my mother 29 years ago, and my father had let him walk free. The question wasn't whether to expose it anymore. The question was whether I'd survive what came next. I drove back from West Virginia that night because staying still felt like drowning. By Wednesday morning, I was home, the envelope about my mother locked in the safe, and rage had settled into something colder. Darlene Frost showed up Wednesday morning with a briefcase and what she called good news. "I know it's been difficult," she said, settling into the chair across from Dad's desk in the workshop. "But I think we've reached a resolution that works for everyone." She pulled out a settlement agreement on cream-colored paper with the weight that suggested money. $850,000 in cash, she said. "All you do is sign a quitclaim deed to the holding company, and the estate dispute disappears. Vernon and Marlene withdraw their challenge. You keep the house, the personal property, everything except the business assets. Clean break." I looked at the number, more than I'd make in 10 years teaching. Enough to secure the boys' college funds, pay off the mortgage, breathe easy. "Oh, what's the holding company name?" so I asked. She glanced at the paperwork. KLLC, I believe. Standard Estate Consolidation Entity. They handle the transfer, liquidate the workshop, inventory, settle the tax issues. You walk away free and clear. KLLC. The same shell company Dad had documented in his ledgers. The laundering vehicle for $58.7 million. The company Vernon and Marlene had used to wash blood money for a decade. And now they wanted me to sign over Dad's estate to it. I kept my face neutral. Teacher's trick: you learn to hide reactions when a student says something that makes you want to scream. "I'll need to think about it," I said. "Of course," Darlene said smoothly. "Take until Friday. But, Wendell, between us, this is generous. Litigation could take years and cost more than you'd win. Sometimes the smart move is to take the settlement and move on." She smiled like she meant it. After she left, I sat in the workshop for 20 minutes just breathing. Dad had known Vernon would come after the estate. He'd known someone would show up offering exactly what a grieving son would want to hear. I started searching the workshop systematically. The ceiling speakers looked original, dust-covered, the kind Dad had installed in the 90s to play classic rock while he worked. I climbed the ladder and unscrewed the first one. Behind the speaker grill was a wireless microphone, commercial surveillance grade, battery-powered, transmitting to a receiver somewhere. I found 2 more in the other speakers. The radio cabinet sat against the back wall where it had been for 30 years. Dad's old Zenith with the wood veneer and analog tuning dial. I'd never seen him turn it on. I opened it. Inside was a digital receiver and a recording system that looked like it belonged in a security company's back room. 3 channels, 1 for each microphone. A hard drive with capacity for months of audio. The timestamp showed it had been recording continuously since 2019. My father had been listening to everything for years. I sat on the floor with the receiver in my lap and felt the foundation shift again. Dad hadn't just left me evidence. He'd built a trap for anyone who walked into this workshop thinking they could lie to his son. The hard drive had files sorted by date. I scrolled backward looking for anything recent. August 23rd, a week before Darlene and I had first met. I pressed play. "Before I let you hear what was on that recording, are you still with me? Comment A if you think Darlene's working with Marlene, or B if she's genuinely trying to help, and add 1 short reason so I can see how you're reading this. Because what comes next isn't just a conversation, it's proof. Please note the next part includes some fictionalized details, added for narrative impact to convey the core message. What matters is the lesson behind it." The recording was crystal clear, Darlene's voice younger sounding without the practiced warmth. "I'll gain his confidence first," she said. "Widower, isolated, overwhelmed, he'll want someone competent handling things. I meet with him once to establish rapport, a second time to review assets, third time to present the settlement." Marlene's voice came through tinny, like speakerphone. "And if he refuses?" "He won't," Darlene said. "The number's big enough to look generous, small enough that we're still ahead by 40 million. He's a high school teacher. He doesn't think in those terms. He'll see 850 and think he won." "What about the ledgers?" "I'll ask about personal effects, offer to help sort them, gain access to the house. If there's anything incriminating, I'll know where it is before he does." I stopped the recording. Her voice on that tape sounded nothing like the woman who'd sat across from me. I scrolled forward, found another conversation from 3 days ago after our second meeting. "He's exactly what you said," Darlene told Marlene. "Decent, overwhelmed, wants to do right by his kids. He'll sign. And the business assets. Once he quit claims to KLLC, we control the liquidation. The Brazilian contracts, the senator's routing accounts, everything Matthew documented, it all disappears into the holding company dissolution, clean. I sat there with my father's surveillance system running, and Darlene Frost's voice explaining exactly how she'd planned to strip me clean. Every word she'd said to me had been scripted. Every expression of sympathy, every piece of advice, every reassurance, all rehearsed with Marlene before she ever walked into my life. The settlement wasn't generous. It was a buyout. $850,000 to hand them $40 million in assets and destroy the only evidence that could put them in prison. And Dad had known someone would try exactly this. He'd wired the workshop to catch them doing it. Every conversation Darlene had in this room, every phone call, every strategy session with Marlene, all recorded, time-stamped, admissible. The recording was still playing. Marlene's voice. What if he already found Matthew's evidence? Then he would have gone to the police already, Darlene said. He's a teacher, not a strategist. If he had proof, he'd have used it by now. He doesn't know how to play this game. I stopped the recording and looked around the workshop. Dad had built me a weapon, not just the ledgers and the tapes and the documentation. He'd given me the surveillance system that would catch everyone who came after me, record their confessions, prove their conspiracy. Darlene Frost had walked into this workshop 4 times, made phone calls to Marlene, reviewed strategy, confirmed the settlement trap. All of it on the hard drive. She thought I was a teacher who didn't know how to play. She was about to find out what happens when teachers do their homework. I spent the rest of Wednesday copying the surveillance files to 3 separate drives. Homework first, then action. Sheriff Virgil Knox pulled into my driveway Wednesday afternoon, carrying a leather satchel I'd never seen before. He climbed out of his cruiser, slowly 73. Now retirement 2 years past, still wearing the badge because Athens County couldn't afford to replace him. His face looked older than the last time I'd seen him at Dad's funeral. "Wendell," he said, "got something for you?" We walked to the workshop. He set the satchel on Dad's desk with the kind of care you give fragile things. "Your father gave me this 6 months ago," Virgil said. "Told me when my son comes and asks the right questions, give him this. You've been asking the right questions." "I think so," I said. He opened the satchel. Inside was a USB drive, 2 business cards, and a cassette tape labeled in Dad's handwriting, 1995, Re Your Mother. The business cards read, Douglas Hale, former FBI Financial Crimes, and Rebecca Townsend, federal prosecutor, Southern District of Ohio. "I tried to investigate in 2001, Virgil said quietly. "Your Uncle Vernon's books didn't add up. Brazilian contracts nobody could verify. I started asking questions. What happened? Political bosses shut me down," he said. "Turns out the senator was paying them. County commissioner called me into his office, told me the Athens economy depended on Ashford lumber staying healthy. Said if I kept digging, I'd be costing people jobs. I was 48 with a pension to protect and a daughter in college. I backed off. He looked at me with eyes that had carried that weight for 23 years. Rufus knew I'd been compromised," Virgil said, "but he never stopped trusting me anyway. 6 months ago, he came to my house at midnight, gave me this satchel, told me you'd need it when the time came. He said I'd been a good sheriff in a rigged system, said that wasn't my fault. I picked up the USB drive. What's on this? I don't know," Virgil said. "Never looked, but those contacts Douglas Hale put 12 money launderers in federal prison before he retired. Rebecca Townsend has a perfect conviction record on financial fraud. Your father didn't pick them randomly." After Virgil left, I sat in the workshop with the cassette tape in my hand. I wasn't ready to hear what Dad had to say about my mother's death. Not yet. Saturday morning, Finn showed up at the cabin unannounced. "You'd thought I'd spend the weekend," he said, hugging me at the door. "Been too long since we had family time." He looked good 31, now clean-shaven, wearing expensive jeans and a flannel shirt that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He handed me $300 in cash. "For groceries," he said, "and whatever the boys need." Lorraine took the money with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We'd talked the night before about what Finn's sudden generosity might mean. "That's sweet of you," she said. Finn's eyes kept drifting toward the workshop. During lunch, he asked about the estate settlement 3 times. When I mentioned Darlene Frost, his face lit up. "She's sharp," he said. "You're lucky to have her." "You've met her?" I asked. "Marlene introduced us," Finn said. "At Dad's funeral. She said you'd need good representation." Lorraine kicked me under the table. We'd set up a camera in the kitchen the night before, recording everything. Faye came home from her shift at the diner around 3. She saw Finn, and something in her face went cold. "Hey, sis," Finn said. "Hey," she said, and walked straight to her room. That evening, while Lorraine took Finn to the grocery store, Faye came into the workshop where I was organizing Dad's files. "Dad," she whispered, "what is he doing to us?" My daughter had never asked me to choose between her and her brother before. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'm going to find out." Sunday evening after Finn left for Columbus, I gathered Lorraine, Faye, and Virgil in the hidden room behind the workshop. I'd invited the sheriff after our Wednesday conversation. He'd earned the right to see this through. I played the surveillance recording. The date stamp read February 14th, 2024, 6 months before Dad died. Darlene Frost's voice came through clear. "I'm at the shop now. Met the brother Vernon. He's paranoid but manageable. Standard intro with the son tomorrow." Marlene's voice, "Push for mediation before he digs too deep. We need this resolved before probate closes." "Priority is securing the KLLC files," Darlene said. "If Matthew left documentation of the Brazilian transfers or the senator's routing, we need to contain it. Send the wire to my Cayman account, half now half when I deliver the quitclaim." "The diagnosis timeline? In 6 months, maybe 8, Marlene said. "Oncologist confirmed stage 4. We have a window." The recording was dated February 2024, 6 months before Dad died. Lorraine's hand found mine in the darkness. Faye's breathing had gone shallow. Virgil leaned forward. "Play that last part again." I rewound 30 seconds. "The diagnosis timeline," Marlene's voice. "It's 6 months, maybe 8. Oncologist confirmed stage 4. We have a window." Virgil stood up. "That's conspiracy to commit wire fraud across state lines, witness tampering. And your sister just confessed to knowing your father's medical prognosis while planning to steal his estate during his final months." "Can you arrest them?" Faye asked. "Not me," Virgil said, "but Rebecca Townsend can. Federal prosecutor with jurisdiction over wire fraud and money laundering. She'll want this recording the surveillance files, everything your grandfather left." When I asked, "Tomorrow," Virgil said. "We move tomorrow, because if Darlene finds out you have these recordings before we secure them legally, they disappear. People like her have contingencies." Lorraine looked at me. "You're sure?" I thought about my mother dying in 1995 because she'd found the forgery ledgers, about Boyd Mercer losing his arm and 28 years of his life, about Dad spending his final month setting this trap because he knew Marlene would come for the estate before his body was cold. "I'm sure," I said. We sat in the hidden room, listening to the recording loop. Darlene's voice detailing the infiltration strategy. Marlene's voice confirming the timeline. The casual discussion of my father's terminal diagnosis, like it was a business opportunity. Marlene had planted Darlene 6 months before Dad's death, which meant she'd known his terminal diagnosis timeline before he did. My sister hadn't just stolen an inheritance. She'd been preparing for his death while he was still breathing. The question wasn't whether she'd cross any line anymore. It was whether there was a line she wouldn't cross. Monday morning, I called Virgil and told him to hold off on Rebecca Townsend. I had a different play in mind. Celeste Harding drove me to Cincinnati Monday morning without asking a single question about what I was carrying. The leather satchel sat on my lap. Dad's evidence, the surveillance recordings, 15 years of ledgers documenting every dollar Vernon and Marlene had laundered. Celeste kept her eyes on I-71, north hand steady on the wheel. "My cousin doesn't take many cases anymore," she said. "But when I told him what you had, he cleared his calendar." "That's why are you helping me?" I asked. She glanced over. "Because I watched your mother die thinking it was an accident. Because I stood in that workshop in 1998 and saw them shove Boyd Mercer into the lathe, and I said nothing for 26 years. Because your father gave me a chance to stop being a coward." The law office was downtown Cincinnati 15th floor of a glass high-rise with a view of the Ohio River. The reception area had the kind of quiet that money buys. Marshall Townsend met us at the conference room door. 60 years old, silver hair, cut military short, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Former federal prosecutor Celeste had said. 20 years specializing in RICO cases before retiring to private practice. "Mr. Strickland," he said, shaking my hand with the grip of someone who meant it. "Celeste tells me you've uncovered something significant." I opened the satchel and spread it across the mahogany conference table. Ledgers, USB drives, surveillance recordings. The documentation of Boyd Mercer's testimony, the KLLC corporate structure, Dad's handwritten notes cross-referencing shell companies with Brazilian drug cartels. Marshall sat down and looked at me over reading glasses. "And walk me through everything," he said, "from the will reading to today." I talked for 2 hours. He took notes in a leather notebook, asking questions that made it clear he knew exactly what he was looking at. When I played the surveillance recording of Darlene and Marlene planning the settlement trap, he stopped me 3 times to replay specific phrases. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a full minute. "What you have," Marshall said finally, "is federal RICO conspiracy, wire fraud across state lines, money laundering through international banking systems, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. This isn't a civil estate dispute. This is organized crime. Federal charges, not county, not state, federal." "Can you prove it?" I asked. "Your father already proved it," Marshall said. "These ledgers are cross-referenced with bank records. The surveillance recordings have timestamps and metadata. You have a living witness in Pennsylvania, and an eyewitness who's ready to testify after 26 years. The lawyer's Cayman wire transfers are documented. This is prosecutable." Celeste's hand found mine under the table. "What do we do?" I asked. "We act now," Marshall said. "Once your sister knows Darlene's exposed, she burns everything. The Brazilian contracts disappear. The KLLC accounts get emptied. The senator's routing records vanish. We have maybe 72 hours before someone tips her off. FBI involvement. By week's end," Marshall said. "I still have contacts at the Cincinnati field office. Financial Crimes Division will want this. But we need to secure the physical evidence first, get it into federal custody before it can be destroyed." He slid a document across the table. "Engagement letter, 35% contingency on asset recovery." "I don't do this for money anymore," Marshall said. "But cases like this take months and cost 6 figures in expert witnesses and forensic accountants. The contingency keeps me invested. You don't pay unless we win." I signed. Marshall opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. My name was written on the front in Dad's handwriting. "Your father sent me this 4 months before he died," Marshall said. I felt the air leave the room. "What?" $25,000 retainer, Marshall said. "Cashier's check." Instructions were to wait for the moment his son walked into my office asking about RICO prosecution. He said I'd know when it happened. My father had paid $25,000, knowing he'd never see me open this envelope. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside were bank records. 4 institutions: Athens County Credit Union, Fifth Third Bank, Cayman National Banco, do Brasil. 15 years of statements, organized by month each one, cross-referenced in Dad's handwriting with corresponding ledger entries. January 2010, Vernon Wire, $340,000 to K-LLC, see ledger page 47. Origin Banco do Brasil. March 2012, Marlene deposit $890,000 Cayman C, ledger page 103, routed through Senator account. On and on, hundreds of transactions, every single one documented, sourced, connected. "He organized every bank record by month," Marshall said quietly. "Cross-referenced them with the ledgers you brought today. Built the entire case file himself. He knew he wouldn't survive to see this through." Celeste was crying. I looked at the bank records with Dad's careful handwriting filling the margins. April 2024. 4 months before he died. 4 months before the cancer took him. Except it wasn't cancer that killed him. The thought came like ice water. Dad had been dying slowly for months, sicker than the oncologist expected, weaker than stage 4 pancreatic cancer usually presented. The hospice nurse had commented on it, how fast he'd deteriorated in the final weeks. And Marlene had known his diagnosis timeline 6 months in advance. Had planted Darlene. Had prepared the estate takeover while he was still breathing. I looked up at Marshall. "Can you test for poison?" I asked. "After someone's been cremated." His face went very still. "Why are you asking that?" "Because my father organized 15 years of bank records 4 months before he died," I said. "Paid you $25,000 to wait for me. Built this entire case knowing he wouldn't survive. And my sister knew exactly when he'd die before it happened." Marshall closed the folder slowly. "If he was being poisoned, the cremation destroyed the evidence," he said. "But if he suspected it, he might have left documentation. Did he leave you anything else, medical records notes about symptoms?" I thought about the cassette tape Virgil had given me, the The one labeled 1995, Re Your Mother. Dad had known someone was killing him slowly. He'd spent his final months building the case that would destroy them. The only question was whether he'd figured out exactly who, and whether they'd killed my mother the same way 29 years earlier. I called Virgil from Marshall's office and told him to meet us at the workshop. If Dad had left medical records about the poisoning, they'd be somewhere we hadn't looked yet. We drove back to the workshop that evening, with Marshall riding shotgun and a hydraulic floor jack rattling in the truck bed. Lorraine was waiting in the driveway when we pulled up. She'd brought coffee in a thermos and the kind of determination that meant she wasn't leaving until we found something. Virgil arrived 10 minutes later in his cruiser, the evening light casting long shadows across the workshop yard. Inside, Marshall walked the perimeter like he was casing a crime scene. The workshop was 50 by 40 feet, industrial concrete floor, poured smooth fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "Your father was methodical," Marshall said. The bank records were organized by month, the ledgers cross-referenced, the surveillance system hidden in plain sight. If he left evidence about the poisoning, it's here. Question is where? Virgil stood near the old drill press, arms crossed, thinking. "Your father mentioned something once," he said slowly. "Maybe 15 years back. We were having a beer after the county fair. He'd had a few too many, and he said something about building a vault under the floor. Said it was for the day after he was gone." "You never followed up?" I asked. I thought he was drunk talking," Virgil said. "But now I'm thinking maybe he wasn't." We spread out examining the concrete, looking for seams, trapdoors, irregular sections. The floor was smooth industrial grade poured in one continuous pour decades ago. No obvious breaks in the surface. Marshall knelt near the south wall, running his hands along the edge where concrete met cinder block. Nothing. Lorraine checked the corners with a flashlight. Nothing. I stood in the center of the workshop, looking at the equipment. The table saw Dad had bought in 1987, the drill press from the 90s, the South Bend lathe that had been here since before I was born, 1,800 pounds of cast iron and steel bolted to a concrete pad that sat slightly raised from the surrounding floor. Dad's voice came back to me from childhood. I was maybe 10 years old, asking him where he kept his important papers. "That his best camouflaged vault isn't invisible," he'd said. "It's impossible." "What's that mean?" I'd asked. "Means you can see it clear as day, but you still can't get to it." I looked at the lathe. "Marshall," I said, "check under the lathe pad." He came over, kneeling beside the massive machine. The concrete pad beneath it was 3 feet by 4 feet, raised about 2 inches above the surrounding floor. The edges were sealed with decades of dust and oil residue. But when Marshall cleaned away the grime with a rag, the seams didn't match the surrounding floor perfectly. The pad was separate. Dad had always said the best hiding place was the one nobody could reach even if they found it. "We need to lift this," Marshall said. The South Bend lathe weighed 1,800 pounds. It had been bolted to that pad since 1972. Moving it would require the hydraulic jack, careful positioning, and the kind of patience that could get you killed if the machine shifted wrong. Virgil backed his cruiser to the workshop door. We unloaded the hydraulic floor, jack commercial grade, rated for 3 tons. I crawled under the lathe carriage with a socket wrench and started removing the mounting bolts. 8 of them, each one rusted tight after 50 years. My hands were shaking. Lorraine held the flashlight steady. "Slow," she said. "You've got time." It took 40 minutes to remove all 8 bolts. Marshall and Virgil positioned the hydraulic jack under the lathe's carriage, finding the balance point where the weight would lift evenly. "Ready?" Marshall asked. I nodded. He started pumping the jack handle, slowly. The lathe groaned metal on metal, the sound of something heavy waking up after decades of stillness. 1,800 pounds of steel rising inch by inch above a secret my father had kept for decades. The lathe rose 1 inch, 2 inches, 3. At 8 inches, Lorraine pointed the flashlight into the gap opening beneath the pad. There," she said. "I see the seam." We lowered the lathe onto blocks, stabilizing it. Then we went to work on the concrete pad itself. It wasn't a solid slab. It was a trapdoor 3 feet by 3 feet, with steel reinforcement hidden beneath a thin veneer of concrete. The edges had been sealed with industrial adhesive that had hardened over the years. Virgil brought a pry bar from his cruiser. We worked the edges, carefully breaking the seal without cracking the concrete. It took another 20 minutes. When the trapdoor finally lifted, we all just stood there staring. The vault was 6 feet deep, lined with reinforced concrete on all sides. Waterproof, fireproof. Built like a bunker. At the bottom sat a commercial Century safe, the kind banks use for document storage. Black steel combination dial on the front, no keyhole backup. No note, no hint, no instructions. Marshall knelt at the edge of the vault, lowering the flashlight. "It's 6 feet deep," he said. "Reinforced concrete on all sides. He didn't build this last year. This is decades old." "Can we open it?" Lorraine asked. "Commercial Century safe," Virgil said. 3-number combination. We'd need the combination or a professional safe cracker. Drilling through that steel would take hours and might destroy whatever's inside. I looked down at the safe sitting in the concrete vault beneath the workshop floor. Dad had built this bunker under 1,800 pounds of equipment that would take 4 men and hydraulic equipment to move. He'd camouflaged it perfectly visible but impossible to access. And he'd locked the final evidence inside a safe with a combination he'd never written down. "He left us a clue," I said. "He wouldn't build this whole system and then lock us out. The combination is somewhere." "Where?" Marshall asked. I thought about the cassette tape Virgil had given me, the one I'd been afraid to listen to, the one labeled in Dad's handwriting, 1995, Ray your mother. Dad had known someone was killing him. He'd spent his final months organizing evidence, paying retainers, building the case that would destroy them. And he'd built this vault decades ago to hold the proof that mattered most. Whatever was locked inside that safe had been important enough to engineer this, but he'd left us no obvious way to open it, unless the combination was in the one piece of evidence I hadn't looked at yet. I had the cassette tape in my truck, but standing there looking down at that safe, I decided we'd try the obvious first. Marshall suggested trying significant dates, while Lorraine wrote down every failed attempt on her phone. I knelt at the edge of the vault, reaching down to the combination dial. The safe was 6 feet below me, fireproof steel gleaming under Virgil's flashlight. "Dad's birthday first," I said. "March 9th, 1946. I turned the dial. Right to 3, left to 9, right to 46. Nothing. "Anniversary," Lorraine said. "June 22nd, 68. I tried it. The dial turned smooth, but the lock didn't engage. Nothing. Marshall suggested Mom's birthday, Vernon's birthday, Marlene's birthday, the date Dad bought the workshop, the date he started Ashford Lumber. Nothing. After 20 minutes, Lorraine looked at me. "Try your birthday," she said. "Yes, why would he use mine?" "Because he always made that joke about forgetting it," she said. "Every year, like clockwork. He'd show up a day late with a card and say he was old and couldn't keep track anymore. It was true. For 40 years, Dad had shown up on July 15th instead of July 14th. Every single year. The family joke. The running gag that never got old. 7/14/69, I said. I turned the dial, right to 7, left to 14, right to 69. The lock clicked. The safe door swung open on smooth hinges, revealing the fireproof interior, stacked with contents that had been waiting decades for this moment. "It opened," I said. Lorraine's hand squeezed my shoulder. I reached down carefully and started lifting items out one by one, handing them up to Marshall, who laid them on Dad's workbench in methodical order. First, a leather folder containing a will. I opened it. Legal document dated 7 years ago, signed by Matthew Rufus Ashford and witnessed by 2 names I didn't recognize. The original will had all 4 of our names listed equally. Estate divided into 4 equal shares. Vernon Marlene, Finn Wendell, 25% each. The house, the workshop, the business assets, the accounts. Everything split down the middle. This was what Dad had wanted before they had pressured him into changing it. Second, a cassette tape labeled in Dad's shaky handwriting, Will Coercion, August 15th. August 15th, 3 weeks before he died. Third, a USB drive in a plastic case marked Father Files with a date from 1996. Fourth, a black and white photograph. Dad standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. She was maybe 40 in the photo. Dark hair, wearing a sundress. They were smiling like people who knew each other well. The background looked like somewhere tropical. No date on the back, but the photo quality suggested it was 30 years old at least. Fifth, a sealed manila envelope with red ink across the front, open last. Marshall looked at the items spread across the workbench. "Play the coercion tape first," he said. "We need to understand the timeline." I put the cassette in Dad's old boombox. The tape hissed for a few seconds, then voices came through. Dad's voice first. Weak. The kind of week that comes 3 weeks before you die. "I want to make sure he gets something," Dad said. "Something specific." Marlene's voice, calm, patient. The voice of someone talking to a confused elderly relative. We've been over this, Daddy. The new will is better for everyone. Think about your legacy. Dividing equally is catastrophic for estate taxes. Vernon and I have the business expertise to manage the transition properly. Finn understands. Wendell will understand, too. But the new will is ready, a third voice said. Male, authoritative. You just need to sign. I looked at Virgil. He nodded. Senator Quentin Whitfield, Virgil said quietly. The senator's voice continued on the tape. Signing today ensures your medical care continues without interruption. The home health agency is becoming difficult to authorize. Insurance questions, paperwork complications, but once the estate planning is finalized, everything smooths out. They'd threatened to withhold his medical care if he didn't sign. Lorraine's hand found mine again. Dad's voice came back stronger now, focused. Promise me something, he said. Anything, Daddy, Marlene said. Promise me he gets the workshop. That's all I'm asking. Vernon gets the business, you handle the estate, Finn gets his share. But Wendell gets the workshop, specifically in writing. Silence on the tape for maybe 10 seconds. Of course, Daddy, Marlene said finally. Her voice had the kind of relief that comes when someone agrees to something you thought would be harder. Wendell gets the workshop, we promise. It'll be in the will. In writing, Dad said. In writing, Marlene confirmed. Vernon, get the lawyer on the phone. We'll add the specific bequest right now. More silence, shuffling papers, a phone call in the background. Then Dad's voice, barely a whisper. Okay, I'll sign. The sound of a pen scratching paper, weak, shaky, taking a long time. There, Marlene said. All done. You did the right thing, Daddy. The family thanks you. The tape ended. We stood in the workshop, listening to the silence that followed. Marshall spoke first. Your father played the long game, he said. He lost the will, but saved the one thing that mattered. They wanted him to sign so badly they would have agreed to anything. So he negotiated the workshop, the building that contained the surveillance system, the vault, the evidence that would destroy them. He knew, I said. He knew they were coercing him, Marshall said. He knew they were threatening his medical care. He knew the new will was a theft, and he played along because fighting would have gotten him nothing, but securing the workshop that got him everything. I looked around the workshop, the surveillance microphones hidden in the ceiling speakers, the vault beneath the lathe, the evidence that had been waiting for me all along. Dad had let them coerce him into signing away the inheritance, but he'd negotiated one specific condition, knowing they'd agree to anything to close the deal. He'd given them millions and kept the workshop. They thought they'd won. He'd chosen me as his king's piece in a game they didn't know they were playing. The question was what the sealed envelope and the mysterious woman's photograph would reveal about just how long he'd been playing it. We left the sealed envelope and the photograph on Dad's workbench Monday night. Marshall said we needed tax documents before we could file the Ryko case. The vault evidence could wait one more day. Lorraine found the emails Tuesday morning while searching Faye's laptop for tax documents we'd need for Marshall. She came into the workshop where I was cataloging the surveillance files. Her face was white. Shared iCloud account, she said. Faye's laptop synced with Finn's old email. She handed me the laptop. 47 email exchanges between Finn and Marlene, the earliest dated 18 months ago, March 2023. I scrolled through them. March 15th, 2023. Aunt Marlene, thanks for helping with tuition. The wire came through. Marlene's reply, happy to help. Small favor, keep me updated on your grandfather's health. Just concerned about him at his age. April 12th, 2023. Grandpa seems good. Had coffee with him Sunday. Says his back hurts but otherwise normal. Marlene, good to hear. Who's been visiting him lately? May 20th, 2023. Just Dad and Faye mostly. Sometimes that sheriff guy Virgil. Marlene, perfect. Wire going through for next semester. I kept scrolling. The pattern was clear. Monthly emails. Monthly $2,000 wires labeled school expenses. Questions about Dad's routines. Visitors' health medications. August 19th, 2024. 3 days before Dad died. Finn's email per senator's request. Receiving small package this week. Ensure it gets to Grandpa for Tuesday medication. Done. Hard to look him in the eye. He hugged me. Lorraine sat down on the workshop floor and put her head in her hands. Our son took money for 18 months to spy on your father, she said. Faye appeared in the doorway. She'd been reading over our shoulders. "What did the package contain?" she asked quietly. I didn't know yet, but I had a USB drive in the vault labeled Father Files that might tell me. We opened it on Marshall's laptop in the hidden room. Single video file dated March 2023, 18 months ago. The video showed a man in his 60s gray beard wearing a PI badge on his belt. He was sitting in what looked like a car camera mounted on the dashboard. "My name is Lyle Garrison," he said. "Private investigator. Your father hired me 18 months ago to document everything. If you're watching this, he's gone and you need answers." The video cut to financial documents. KLLC Shell Company traces through 4 separate corporations, Lyle said. Final ownership lands at a holding company controlled by Senator Quentin Whitfield, your sister's husband. 60% of his gubernatorial campaign donors link back to South Florida drug distribution operations. The senator didn't just profit from the laundering, he authorized the largest transactions personally. More documents, bank signatures, transfer authorizations, all bearing the senator's electronic signature. "Your father suspected the senator was planning something," Lyle continued. "He saw the pattern 1998 Boyd Mercer incident right after the senator married into the family in 97, first family cleanup. Your mother in 95, circumstantial, but the pattern fits. The senator ran the operation, your sister's middle management. Your brother handles the finance side, Vernon's the muscle. The senator had been planning this since 1995. The video cut to surveillance footage, timestamp from 6 weeks ago, August 2024. Finn's car pulling into Dad's driveway. Tuesday morning, Finn getting out with a white pharmacy bag, walking to the door, Dad answering, the hug, Finn handing over the bag, leaving. "Your father installed cameras 6 months ago," Lyle said. "Every Tuesday your son delivered medication, white pharmacy bags, different pharmacy each time, according to the stamps. Your father kept every bottle. He suspected poisoning, but couldn't prove it without pharmaceutical analysis. That's your next step." The video ended. We sat in the hidden room, staring at the screen. Marshall spoke first. "We need a pharmacist, someone who can analyze the medication bottles and testify." Lorraine pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "My cousin, Nadine Caldwell. She's a pharmacist in Columbus, specializes in cardiac medication protocols." Nadine arrived 3 hours later. 45 years old, wearing professional clothes and carrying a testing kit that looked like something from a crime lab. We'd gathered Dad's prescription bottles from the funeral. The hospice had returned them with his personal effects. I'd thrown them in a box and forgotten about them. Nadine laid them out on the kitchen table. 7 bottles, different medications, pain management, blood pressure, heart medication. She picked up the digoxin bottle, examined the label, opened it, and poured pills onto a white cloth. "And this bottle's double the standard dose," she said. 0.25 milligrams instead of 0.125. "What does that mean?" I asked. She looked at me with the kind of expression doctors give when they're about to deliver bad news. "For an elderly patient with declining kidney function, digoxin builds up in the system over weeks," she said. "Double dosage creates toxic levels that cause cardiac arrhythmia. Heart rhythm becomes irregular. Eventually, the heart just stops. It looks exactly like natural heart failure in a terminal cancer patient. My son had handed my father the pills that would kill him. The pharmacy stamp." Nadine continued examining the bottle under a magnifying glass. "This is a forgery. The DEA registration number doesn't match any licensed pharmacy in Ohio. This prescription was filled somewhere else, and the label was faked to look local." Virgil had joined us by then. He took the bottle carefully. "When was this filled?" he asked. "This 6 weeks before he died," Nadine said. "August 19th, the date on Finn's email." Lorraine was crying now. Faye held her mother's hand. "He didn't know," Faye said. "Finn didn't know what he was delivering." "Doesn't matter," Virgil said quietly. "He took money to spy on his grandfather and hand over packages from a senator running a criminal conspiracy. Whether he knew the packages contained poison or not, he was part of it." I looked at the pill bottle in Virgil's hand. Dad had known someone was killing him. He'd hired Lyle Garrison 18 months ago, the same moment the senator started recruiting Finn. He'd installed cameras, saved every prescription bottle, documented every Tuesday delivery. He'd known exactly what was happening, and he'd spent his final year building evidence, paying retainers, setting traps, preparing the counterattack. He'd asked all the right questions 18 months ago, so I'd have every answer I needed to finish it. The only question left was whether I had the stomach to destroy my own son to get justice for my father. I made the decision Tuesday night, called Marshall at midnight, and told him to take everything to the FBI. Finn's emails, Nadine's pharmaceutical analysis, Lyle's surveillance footage. All of it. Whatever it cost, my family dad deserved justice. The CNN Chiron read, "Breaking Kentucky. Senator arrested in multi-state RICO sweep when Lorraine turned up the volume at 7:15 Tuesday morning. We were in the cabin kitchen, coffee brewing, Faye making eggs. The television had been background noise until the words "Senator" and "arrested" cut through. My phone rang. Marshall. "It's happening now," he said. 4 simultaneous raids. FBI's been planning this for 2 weeks since I handed them your father's evidence. Where? I asked. Frankfort, Kentucky, the senator's campaign office. Lexington Marlene's PR firm. Dallas Vernon's meeting some Brazilian contacts at a restaurant. Athens' Darlene Frost was walking into the courthouse when they picked her up. Coordinated, I said. FBI Special Agent Sarah Brennan is running point, Marshall said. She wanted them all in custody before anyone could destroy evidence or flee. Cable news is picking it up now. Turn on CNN. I was already watching. Helicopter footage showed FBI agents in tactical gear surrounding a brick building in Frankfort. The Chiron updated gubernatorial frontrunner Quentin Whitfield, subject of federal investigation. Lorraine sat down at the table beside me. Faye turned off the stove and came over. "Is this because of what we gave them?" Faye asked quietly. Yes, I said. We watched in silence. At 8:42, CNN cut to live footage. Senator Quentin Whitfield walked out of his Frankfort campaign office flanked by 4 FBI agents. His hands were cuffed behind his back. He was wearing a Navy suit that probably cost $3,000. His face was composed, the practiced calm of a politician who'd spent 30 years managing his image. But his eyes looked hollow. The man who'd killed my father was being walked past cameras in handcuffs. Reporters shouted questions from behind police barriers. "Senator, did you order the murder of Rufus Strickland? Is it true you've been laundering drug money for 15 years? Will you suspend your gubernatorial campaign?" The senator said nothing. The FBI agents loaded him into a black SUV and drove away. Lorraine's hand found mine under the table. "He was 3 weeks from winning," she said. 3 weeks from being governor. "Well, not anymore," I said. CNN brought in a legal analyst, a woman in her 50s wearing glasses and a serious expression. "This is unprecedented," she said. "Federal authorities don't arrest a gubernatorial frontrunner 3 weeks before an election unless the evidence is overwhelming. The charges we're hearing: RICO conspiracy, interstate wire, fraud money, laundering, these are serious federal crimes. But the murder charges, if those stick, Senator Whitfield is looking at mandatory life sentences." The screen split into 4 boxes. Top left, Senator Quentin Whitfield being led into FBI headquarters in Frankfort. Top right, Marlene Whitfield in handcuffs outside her Lexington office, camera, crews everywhere. Bottom left, Vernon Blackwell face down on a Dallas restaurant floor, FBI agent securing his hands behind his back. Bottom right, Darlene Frost against a police car in Athens, her expensive briefcase on the ground beside her. Faye was crying quietly. "Your aunt," she said. "I can't believe Aunt Marlene." "She's not your aunt anymore," Lorraine said firmly. "She stopped being family the day she decided to murder your grandfather." The CNN Chiron scrolled charges. Federal RICO, conspiracy interstate, wire, fraud money, laundering $58.7 million, witness tampering, first-degree murder. Boyd, Mercer, 1998, first-degree murder. Rufus Strickland, 2024, digoxin poisoning scheme. First-degree murder, digoxin poisoning scheme. My father's name on national television. I'd spent 54 years as a high school English teacher in a town of 8,000 people. Now my family's crimes were breaking news on CNN. The legal analyst came back on screen. "What's remarkable here is the pharmaceutical evidence," she said. "Sources tell us the FBI has prescription bottles, pharmacy records, and testimony from a licensed pharmacist proving the victim was poisoned with double cardiac medication over a 6-week period. That's premeditated murder. That's planning. That's not something you can claim was an accident or a mistake." My phone rang again. "Marshall, bail hearings are in 2 hours," he said. "Federal prosecutors are requesting no bail for the Senator Marlene and Darlene. Vernon might get bail, but they're asking for $5 million and an ankle monitor. What happens next? Senator's campaign officially suspended as of 9:30, Marshall said. His running mate is holding a press conference this afternoon to distance himself. Marlene's PR firm is already issuing statements about how shocked they are. Vernon's Brazilian contacts are disappearing faster than water in August. And the murder charges. Federal murder carries mandatory life sentences if convicted, Marshall said. No parole, no early release. They die in prison if the jury finds them guilty. And Wendell. The evidence your father left is airtight. Surveillance footage, pharmaceutical analysis, financial records witness testimony from Boyd Mercer, who's still alive in Pennsylvania. The senator's done. I looked at the television, split screen showing all 4 defendants in federal custody. The case is yours now, Marshall said. Criminal charges are the government's problem, but civil asset recovery. That starts next week. We'll file to seize everything they took from your father's estate. The house, the accounts, the business assets. Within 18 months, you'll have it back. What about my siblings? Marshall was quiet for a moment. Your siblings won't forgive you, he said. Marlene's facing life in prison because you turned over evidence. Vernon's business is destroyed. Finn's emails are Exhibit 17 in the federal case. They'll blame you for breaking the family. But you don't need them to forgive you. Anosem, I said, I don't. I hung up and watched the senator who would have been governor being processed into federal custody. The man who'd ordered my mother's death in 1995 covered up Boyd Mercer's maiming in 1998 and poisoned my father in 2024. They'd never forgive me for destroying them. I'd never forgive them for what they had done. The week after the arrests, FBI started interviewing witnesses. Marshall said federal prosecutors wanted testimony locked down before defense attorneys could make deals. Celeste Harding raised her right hand in the FBI Cincinnati Bureau interview room the week after the arrests and swore to tell the truth about what she'd witnessed 28 years ago. I sat behind one-way glass with Marshall watching. She was 61 now, gray hair pulled back, hands folded on the table. FBI agent Sarah Brennan sat across from her. Take your time, Brennan said. Start with the November 1998. Celeste took a breath. I was 22, new cafe owner, closing late, maybe 10:30. The workshop was across the street. Lights were on. What did you see? Through the window, I saw Vernon Blackwell and Marlene Ashford arguing with someone. A young man in work clothes, Boyd Mercer. I didn't know his name then. Describe what happened. They were shouting. Vernon was pointing at papers on a desk. Boyd shook his head. Marlene stepped forward and said something. Boyd turned toward the door like he was leaving. Vernon grabbed his shoulder. Celeste's hands tightened. Boyd pulled away. Vernon shoved him, hard. Boyd stumbled backward toward the lathe. It was running. I could see the spindle turning. Marlene pushed him from the side, both of them. Vernon shoved first. Marlene pushed second. Boyd fell backward into the lathe. I heard the scream even through the window. Brennan wrote notes. What did you do? I froze. Maybe 30 seconds. Then I ran to the payphone 2 blocks away and called 911. Didn't give my name. Said there was an accident at Ashford Workshop. Then I left before the sheriff arrived. Then why didn't you tell Sheriff Knox what you saw? Celeste looked down. Because 6 months later, Vernon came to my cafe, May 1999, handed me an envelope and walked out. Inside was a newspaper clipping about Boyd's death ruled an accident. Handwritten note said, keep your mouth shut or see what happened to the apprentice. She'd carried this secret for 28 years because my brother had threatened her life. I was terrified, Celeste said. 23 years old, running a business alone, and a man who just killed someone was telling me to stay quiet. So I documented everything. She pulled out a leather journal from her purse. I wrote down every detail about that night. Date time what I saw Vernon's threat. Kept this journal in a safety deposit box for 28 years. Brennan took the journal carefully. When did you decide to speak up? Celeste looked at the one-way glass. When Rufus died and I saw his son at the funeral, she said. I saw Rufus in his eyes, decided I'd been a coward long enough. Marshall put his hand on my shoulder. 4 weeks after the raids, we were in federal court for Finn's plea hearing. The prosecutor offered a choice full prosecution or cooperation plea with reduced sentencing. Marshall said the government wanted Finn's testimony against the senator more than another conviction. Lorraine and I argued 2 hours in the courthouse hallway, while Faye sat between us crying. He's our son, Lorraine said. 5 years probation, full cooperation, that's the deal we take. He didn't know what he was delivering. He delivered the poison for 18 months, I said. He took money to spy on his grandfather. He deserves prison. And he's 28 years old. You want to destroy his whole life. He helped destroy Dad's. How do you choose between justice for your father and mercy for your son? Faye looked at both of us. Stop, she said quietly. Please just stop. Marshall stepped in. 5 years incarcerated, full cooperation with prosecutors, 10 years probation after release, lifetime ban from any inheritance. That's the compromise. Lorraine looked at me. That's what you want our son in prison? Yes, I said. She didn't speak to me the rest of the day. In court, Finn stood before the judge. 28 years old, wearing a suit Lorraine bought him. His face was pale. The judge read the plea terms. 5 years federal prison, full testimony cooperation, lifetime inheritance ban. Do you accept these terms? The judge asked. Finn looked at me across the courtroom. His eyes were wet. Yes, Your Honor, he said. The judge asked if he wanted to make a statement. I didn't know about the digoxin, Finn said. His voice broke. They told me it was vitamins to keep Grandpa strong, special supplements his doctor recommended. I didn't know I was... He couldn't finish. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I stared at him for 10 seconds and said nothing. Then I stood and walked out. Lorraine stayed behind. I heard her crying as she went to Finn, embracing him, while the bailiff waited to take him into custody. In the hallway, she found me 20 minutes later. Her face was streaked with tears. She looked at me like I'd killed something in her. Maybe I had. And he's our son, she said. Our baby, and you just sent him to prison. He handed Dad the pills that killed him, I said. Whether he knew what they were or not, he did it for money. That's who he chose to be. And this is who you choose to be. Someone who can watch his own son go to prison without even saying goodbye. I didn't have an answer. My youngest son was going to federal prison for 5 years. My wife looked at me like I'd killed part of her. Maybe I had. But my father was dead, and my son had handed him the poison. I couldn't forgive that even if she could. Lorraine moved into the guest room that night. We'd been married 31 years. I didn't know if we'd make it to 32. The week after court, Celeste called and asked me to meet her at the cafe, said there was someone I needed to meet. The woman waiting at Mountain Mug Cafe had my father's eyes. She was sitting in the corner booth near the window, 53, maybe, dark hair going gray, wearing scrubs like she'd come from a hospital shift. When she looked up and saw me, her expression was nervous hope mixed with fear. Celeste stood beside the table. Wendell, she said. This is Estelle Ramsey. She's a registered nurse at the Athens nursing home, and she's your father's daughter. I sat down slowly. Estelle folded her hands on the table. They were shaking slightly. I'm your father's daughter, she said. From before he married your mother. My mother was a waitress at the diner on Main Street. They had a relationship for about 2 years in the early 70s. She got pregnant. He was already engaged to Cynthia. Why didn't I know about you? Because my mother asked him not to tell anyone, Estelle said. She didn't want to destroy his marriage or complicate his family. But he never abandoned me. He sent money, $80,000 over the years. Paid for my nursing school, helped when my mother got sick, made sure I had what I needed. She pulled out a shoebox from the bag beside her. And he wrote me letters, she said, every birthday for 35 years. Inside the box were envelopes, dozens of them, each one addressed to Estelle in Dad's handwriting. I stood at the back during his funeral, Estelle said quietly. I was too afraid to introduce myself to the official family. I didn't know if you'd believe me or if you'd think I was just someone trying to get money from the estate. Well, why come forward now? Because Celeste found me, Estelle said. After the arrests, she told me what you'd done to bring justice for your father, and I thought maybe the kind of son who'd fight that hard for his father would be willing to meet the daughter his father loved in secret. I picked up one of the letters. The envelope was dated 15 years ago. I opened it carefully. Dad's handwriting filled 2 pages. Life advice, stories about his week, questions about her nursing career, and at the bottom, your half-siblings have a brother who is good. His name is Wendell. He fixes things when they're broken. He teaches kids how to think. If you ever need family, find him. He won't turn you away. I've told him nothing about you because that was your mother's wish, but I know his heart. You'd be proud to call him brother. My father had loved this woman enough to send her letters for 35 years. I looked at Estelle. She was crying. "And I was hoping you'd be the kind of brother he described," she said. "I am," I said. We stood up at the same time. The hug felt like something that had been waiting 30 years to happen. "I'm grateful you are," she whispered. 2 weeks after Finn's plea hearing, I drove to the Federal Detention Center in Cincinnati. The visiting room was institutional gray, reinforced glass partitions, phone receivers on each side, inmates in orange jumpsuits on one side, visitors on the other. Finn came in looking pale and smaller than I remembered. His face was drawn, dark circles under his eyes. My son looked 10 years older than he had 2 weeks ago. He sat down on his side of the glass and picked up the phone. I picked up mine. "Dad," he said. His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the digoxin." "Tell me from the start," I said. "All of it." Finn took a breath. "Aunt Marlene approached me when I was in high school, senior year, said she wanted to help with college expenses, offered $2,000 a month as a scholarship. All I had to do was check on Grandpa sometimes, make sure he was okay, report back on his health." "And you didn't think that was strange?" "I was 17, Finn said. I thought it was family taking care of family. The tasks were small at first, just visiting. Then she asked me to help him with paperwork, then to make sure he was taking his medications properly. It escalated so slowly I didn't see it happening." "When did the Tuesday medications start?" 8 months ago, Finn said. "February. She said Grandpa's doctor had prescribed special supplements to help with his strength during the cancer treatments. Said the pharmacy would send them to me, and I should make sure he took them every Tuesday. She said it was important he didn't forget, because the dosage schedule was specific." He put his hand against the glass. "Dad, I swear to God I thought they were vitamins, special supplements to keep him strong. I didn't know I was handing him poison." I looked at my youngest son through the reinforced glass for 30 seconds without saying anything. "I believe you," I said finally. His face collapsed with relief. "But," I continued, "you knew you were hiding things from us. You took money for 18 months to spy on your grandfather. You knew that was wrong. You did it anyway. That was a choice, Finn, and choices have consequences." "I know," he whispered. "I will write," I said. "I will visit. I will not abandon you, but I also won't pretend you bear no responsibility for what happened. You made choices that helped kill your grandfather. We're going to work toward you, learning to live with that. No shortcuts, no easy forgiveness, real accountability." Finn was crying now. "I understand," he said. "I love you, son," I said. "Always will. But love doesn't mean pretending you didn't do wrong. It means helping you become better than you were. Goodbye for today." I hung up the phone and stood. I walked out of that detention center without looking back at the glass partition, where my youngest son sat crying. If I had looked back, I don't know if I could have kept walking. But love without accountability wasn't love. It was permission to keep making the same mistakes. I kept my promise. I wrote Finn every week, visited every month. We were learning what accountability looked like when it came wrapped in love instead of abandonment. The workshop at 47 Mill Hollow Road opened its doors to 14 high school students on the first Saturday morning after Christmas. 4 months of restoration work had transformed the building. New roof, refurbished tools, fresh paint on walls that had witnessed murder and secrets, and my father's final months building a case against his own family. The hidden room behind the false wall was sealed now, but not before I'd installed 3 bronze plaques on the concrete wall, one for my father, one for Boyd Mercer, one for my mother. The restoration cost came from the recovered assets. Marshall had won the civil case in November. $12 million returned from the estate theft. I'd kept $2 million for the workshop and split the rest between Boyd's family as restitution and a vocational training scholarship fund in my mother's name. Boyd Mercer stood at the front of the workshop, addressing the 14 students. 48 years old, missing his right arm brain injury that made his speech slow and deliberate. He was the primary welding instructor. "Today we learned safety first," Boyd said. "This lathe can take your arm. I know because it took mine 28 years ago in this building. Your teacher's family tried to kill me. They failed. Now I teach where they tried to end me. That's what we call taking your power back." The students listened with the kind of attention you can't buy. "Your grandfather built this place to make things that last," Boyd said, looking at me. "We're going to honor that." Virgil Knox sat near the door in his sheriff's uniform. Retired now, but he'd volunteered to provide security for the Saturday sessions. Said it made him feel useful. Glenn Sawyer handled the administrative paperwork from a desk in the corner. He'd been Dad's accountant before the arrests, testified for the prosecution. Now, he managed the scholarship fund applications. Estelle Ramsey came through the side door, carrying 2 trays of sandwiches from the cafe, her weekly contribution. She'd taken 3 Saturdays off from the nursing home to help get the program running. She smiled at me, my half-sister. The family Dad had loved in secret for 35 years. She fit into our lives like she'd always been there. Saturday evening, we had a barbecue in the outdoor area behind the workshop. Ribs on the grill, corn, pie from Celeste's cafe. Tate came home on leave from his army deployment, 26 now broader in the shoulders, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd found his place. He met Estelle for the first time. "You served?" he asked, noticing the military wife bracelet on her wrist. "My husband," Estelle said. 20 years Navy, retired now. They spent an hour talking deployment stories, while I turned ribs and watched my oldest son connect with the aunt he'd never known existed. My oldest son was meeting my secret half-sister for the first time, while my youngest sat in federal prison. Faye pulled me aside near the grill. "I visited Finn last week," she said. "He wanted me to tell you he's doing okay. Got into the prison GED program, learning welding. He's been writing letters to Mrs. Mercer." Irene accepted them. "She did," Faye said. She wrote back, said forgiveness is a process, but she appreciates him trying. Doesn't undo what happened, but he's trying. I looked across the yard. Lorraine was sitting on the porch swing with Estelle, both of them laughing about something. My wife had moved back into our bedroom 3 weeks ago. We were finding our way back to each other slowly. Some fractures don't heal clean, but they heal. Estelle's husband, Robert, stood up with a beer bottle raised. "To family," he said. "Found made and restored." We raised our bottles and glasses. Justice was the foundation. Forgiveness was the roof. You couldn't build one without the other. Late that night, I sat on the cabin porch with my laptop. A new email from the prison system. Finn's message was 3 paragraphs. He swore again that he hadn't known about the digoxin. Said he understood. That didn't erase his complicity. Said he thought about Grandpa every day. Said he loved me. Lorraine came out with 2 mugs of coffee and sat beside me. "Are you going to write back?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "but not tonight." She nodded. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that comes after 30 years of marriage when you don't need words to fill space. "I used to think forgiveness and justice meant choosing one," I said finally. "Like they were opposite ends of a scale. You either punished or you pardoned. And now I know it means doing both in the right order," I said. "Justice stops the harm. Forgiveness restores the people. You can't skip justice to get to forgiveness. That's just enabling. But you can't stop at justice either. That's just revenge." "Where are you at with Finn?" "Oh, getting there," I said, slowly. "And with Marlene and Vernon." "It never," I said. "They don't want forgiveness. They want escape. There's a difference." "And with your father?" "Yes," I said. "I've forgiven him for the secrets and the lies and the years of silence. He did what he thought he had to do to protect us. He was wrong about some of it, but his heart was in the right place." "And yourself." I looked at her. "Working on it," I said. We sat until the sun came up over the ridge behind the workshop. The building looked different in the dawn light. Not a crime scene anymore, not a vault of secrets, just a place where people learned to make things with their hands and maybe figured out how to rebuild themselves in the process. My father had paid $32,000 for a workshop that held $58 million in evidence and the truth about who killed him. But what he really gave me wasn't the money, or the building, or even the justice. He gave me the chance to finish what he couldn't. And in finishing it, I discovered the kind of man who could. For 55 years, I'd been the person everyone came to when things broke. The teacher who fixed confusion, the father who fixed problems, the son who fixed messes. Today, watching the sun rise over a workshop full of possibility instead of secrets, I was finally something different. I was a father who'd fixed himself. And to you listening to my story, remember this. For 55 years, I thought being a good father meant fixing everyone's problems. I didn't see the family betrayal happening in front of me. I trusted when I shouldn't have. When the truth came out, I made choices that broke my wife's heart and sent my son to prison. Those decisions still haunt me. But here's what I learned. Justice and forgiveness aren't opposites, they're a sequence. You can't skip accountability to reach healing. That's enabling, not love. Every family story has chapters we wish we could rewrite. Family betrayal cuts deeper than anything else. but facing truth, no matter how painful, is the only path to peace. I believe God allowed this journey to teach me that sometimes the hardest love holds people responsible. My father showed me that by building evidence for 18 months instead of looking away. He chose truth over comfort, so did I. If this family story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me, was I right to hold my son accountable, or should I have protected him from the consequences? There's no easy answer. If you know someone struggling with family betrayal, share this with them. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to, so you never miss one. Your voice matters here. Thank you for staying until the very end. I know this wasn't an easy story to hear. Before you go, please remember that some details have been fictionalized for narrative and reflection. What matters is the truth at its core. May you find the courage to choose accountability and healing in your own life. God bless you.